Chapter 1685. However, unlike those actresses in the past, Yoon Shusher did not try to avoid Hua Jin whenever possible. This, however, left him dissatisfied. It seemed that this woman would not let him be at ease after all. She can film in the production team in the future. However, you have to send her home once she's done. Do you understand? Mu Yaja reminded him. He was worried about leaving his woman in the production team. Qin Zhou hesitated for a moment but eventually gave in and nodded. All right, I understand what you mean. I'll do as you say. I'll leave my woman's career to you, so you have to be careful. If she gets hurt again, I'll hold you responsible. Qin Zhou nodded repeatedly in agreement. Don't worry, Chairman Mu. I was careless in the past, but I'll take good care of her from now on. She loves acting and cherishes this job very much. Mu Yaja paused for a moment before continuing. If she wants to work behind the scenes in the future, you can pave the way for her in this aspect. When the time is right, she'll set up a film and television company. It'll be a good choice for you to take charge of the overall situation. Putting aside other aspects, Mu Yaja had high hopes for Qin Zhou's capabilities. If Yoon Shusher decided to work behind the scenes and set up a film and television company in the future, Qin Zhou would be one of his generals. Feeling flattered, Qin Zhou smiled and said, It's my honor that Chairman Mu thinks so highly of me. I won't let you down. Yoon Shusher drove home. Under Yoon Yeching's request, she made an appointment with a Chinese medicine specialist to send Yoon Yeho to the hospital. When Yoon Yeho was crippled back then, he did not receive any treatment and simply returned home to recuperate. After a diagnosis, the doctor regretfully expressed that if he could have gone to the hospital in time for surgery and undergone vigorous rehabilitation, there was still a chance for him to stand up again. However, after so many years, he was bedridden and the muscles in his legs had atrophied. From then on, there was no hope for him to stand up again. Hearing this, Yoon Yeching felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. He felt even more ashamed toward this younger brother of his. If it were not for him back then, if it weren't for the Yoon family's mishap, Yoon Yeho wouldn't have given him all his savings in order to help him, and he wouldn't have ended up crippled for life. According to the doctor, this kind of surgery was not very difficult. In the county, it would cost at most 30,000 yuan to cure the leg. However, after Yoon Yeho was injured, the foreman ran away with the money and didn't get a single cent for compensation, nor did he get an explanation. After secretly giving all his savings to Yoon Yeching, he thought that his legs were useless, so he went home after a simple treatment. Apart from his legs, Yoon Yeching also did other checkups on his brother, and the report was only released the next day. Once they were out of the hospital and in the car, Yoon Yeching secretly wiped his tears sadly. As Yoon Shusher steered the car, she caught sight of her father's gloomy face through the rearview mirror. She smiled and said, Dad, don't be sad. Everything will be fine. It's all because of me, Yoon Yeching sighed. It's all because of me that his legs are crippled. Brother, don't say that. Now that I can see that you and Shusher are doing well, I'm already satisfied. Yoon Yeho gave a simple and honest smile, but his face revealed an honest and gratified smile. Yoon Shusher had mixed feelings about this. Once they reached home, under the repeated pleas of Yoon Yeching and Yoon Yeho, Yoon Shusher drove them out to look for a house. Chapter 1686. However, Yoon Yeching said that since they were already married, they should not disturb them. Yoon Yeching planned to find a place to settle down first before finding a job to take care of Yoon Yeho while earning money from his part-time job. He had already discussed this with Yoon Shusher, so she could not reject him. His only request was that he had limited capabilities. After all, he had to take care of his son while working. When he was not at home, he hoped that Yoon Shusher could find a nanny to take good care of him. Yoon Shusher agreed to it. They found a dormitory not far from the factory. The rent was not high. After negotiating the contract, he insisted on paying the rent himself. It would not be too late to move the luggage tomorrow. On the way home, he asked, Sure, since you've registered your marriage with him, when do you plan to get married? Married meant that they were going to hold a wedding. He was obviously anxious for her when he asked for her opinion. Initially, he was a little skeptical, feeling that he could not see through the man's character. He did not know if the latter was sincere to his daughter or if he was here to deceive her. As an elderly man, he was protective of his daughter, so it was natural for him to be suspicious. However, when he found out today that this lad had brought Yun Shusher to the Civil Affairs Bureau to register their marriage, he understood everything at once. This lad was probably using his actions to declare to him that he was sincere to his daughter because of his suspicions and probing yesterday. At least he was responsible. Putting everything else aside, just this point alone was enough for him to fully approve of this female candidate. Yun Shusher was stunned for a moment before she said slowly, Dad, I'm not ready yet. The matter of registering our marriage is very sudden. Even now, I still feel like I'm dreaming. She could not believe that she had really become Muyaja's wife. It was perfectly justifiable. She had never dared to dream of having a family. Now that this dream was about to come true, she began to worry about her gains and losses. It was not that she did not believe in Muyaja. She believed in his promise. It was just that, perhaps he was too perfect for her to believe that she could have him all to herself. Sigh. Sure, how can you think like that? Yun Shusher disagreed with her statement and retorted, You love to let your imagination run wild. Sure, you are a good child. Father believes in you. You will definitely be happy in this life. Yun Shusher smiled shyly and was a little distracted. She couldn't help but imagine what her wedding with Muyaja would be like. Every girl had many beautiful fantasies about their wedding. She was no exception. Everyone hoped to be the happiest bride in the world on that day. She was even more so. Yun Yeching muttered to himself as he urged, Sure, even if you're not in a hurry, you should get engaged first. An engagement ceremony is a must. Why don't I pick a good day for you to hold the engagement ceremony first? What do you think? I haven't asked for his opinion yet. When he comes back tonight, I'll ask him what he thinks. Good child. Yun Yeching nodded approvingly. Husband and wife should be like this. They should discuss everything. You can ask for his opinion later and see what he has in mind. Chapter 1687. As he spoke, his face was flushed with happiness. It was as if Shusher's engagement was happier than him marrying off his daughter. Yun Yeho liked Shusher very much. Perhaps, from a certain point of view, he liked and doted on her more than his two daughters. It wasn't that he was biased, and his elbow was on the outside. It was just that humans were made of flesh. He loved his family, but he was not blind. There was no need to talk about Xiangyu. Yun Qingmiao and Yun Qinli, on the other hand, were unfilial. Therefore, his heart was already dead and he did not miss his two daughters much. Both Yun Yeching and Yun Yeho encouraged her to set the wedding date as soon as possible. The wedding might not be urgent, but the engagement ceremony must be held with dignity. Being able to personally hand his daughter over to a man he trusted could also be considered as fulfilling one of his wishes. As Yun Shusher agreed, she wondered if Muyaja had considered this matter or if he had already made arrangements. That night, when Yun Shusher reached home, she gave Muyaja a call. However, the other party said that he still had some matters to attend to and might be back late, so they did not have to wait for him for dinner. His voice was deep and hurried over the phone, and there seemed to be someone else talking on the other end. It seemed that he was in a meeting. He was probably the only one who had the privilege to pick up the phone in a meeting when there was no one around, and he didn't hide it from anyone. She could not help but mutter inwardly, why are there so many meetings? Just as she finished muttering, she was stunned for a moment before replying, you go ahead with your work." With that, she hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, Yoon Shur felt a sense of emptiness in her heart. Suddenly, she felt a little disappointed. Today was their wedding day, after all. They had happily collected their marriage certificate in the morning, and at night, she was eagerly waiting for her newlywed husband to come home for dinner. However, he said that he would be busy with work and would be back late. Inevitably, she felt a little disappointed. She had become a lookout for her husband. However, despite her disappointment, she was not dissatisfied. After all, he had pushed aside all his work for the past 2 days for her sake. It was indeed a waste of time to focus on all his work today. It could not be helped that he would be back late. This was his job, and she should respect it. Just like how he respected her work. Yu prepared dinner, and the whole family enjoyed it in harmony. While Yoon Yeching was full of praise for Yu's culinary skills, he also reproached Yoon Shur for making him do the housework at such a young age. Yu retorted, "Grandpa, you can't talk about mommy like that. I volunteered to do the housework. I'm very willing to do housework for mommy. I feel very satisfied to be able to share her burden." Yoon Yeho was touched by his son's obedience and couldn't help but compare the two of them in his heart. Yu was only 7 years old, but he was already so sensible and filial. Look at his 2 daughters. Sigh. Forget it. It was the father's fault for not teaching the child well. She couldn't blame anyone. Looking at the obedient Yu, she could only be envious. After dinner, Yu and Xiao Yichen went to the kitchen to clean up the mess. Under Yu's guidance, Xiao Yichen gradually developed hands-on skills. Washing the dishes and mopping the floor were no longer a problem for him. He could even clean up very well. Yoon Shur then tidied up the living room and study. In the blink of an eye, it was already late at night. After coaxing the children to sleep, Yoon Yeching also took care of Yoon Yeho. Chapter 1688. It was already 8:00. She was still worried, so she made another call. Actually, she hesitated for a long time about whether she should make this call or not. What if he was still busy? Would she be disturbing him? However, she really wanted to know if he was still busy. Hence, she mustered up her courage and dialed his number. Mu Yaja picked up the call. He would never miss any of her calls, no matter what he was doing. It had become a habit for him to pick up her calls in a timely manner. Over the phone, Mu Yaja's voice sounded slightly tired and hoarse. From the sound of it, he seemed to still be in the middle of a meeting. Still in a meeting. A meeting that lasted from 5:00 to 8:00. Yoon Shur sighed again and again. Mu Yaja said, "I'll probably be very late. You should rest first. Don't wait for me. Come back early." After Yoon Shur finished speaking, she hung up the phone and sat on the sofa in the living room. Although she was very sleepy, she didn't feel like going back to her room to rest at all. Just today alone, she really wanted to wait for him to come home. However, this phone call had also taught her the meaning of putting herself in someone else's shoes. The process of maturity was gradually learning to put oneself in someone else's shoes. Now, it turned out that waiting for him to come home was such an anxious and uneasy matter. It turned out that she was really worried and missed him when he came home so late. Similarly, she had been on set for so long and rarely called him in half a month. He must have missed her that much too, right? Hence, on the night of the proposal, before they even entered the hotel, he had hugged her so tightly. It was as if he had poured all the longing that he had accumulated for more than half a month into his arms. He couldn't bear to let go. He had hugged her into the room and entered her so eagerly. He had been hungry for more. He must have missed her so much that he had gone crazy all night. When she thought about it this way, she had really gone overboard. No matter how busy work was, it couldn't be an excuse to neglect home. That was why he had asked her not to work and to stay at home so that he could take care of her. She actually didn't understand what he meant. As Yun Shishir thought about it, she felt extremely guilty. She hugged her knees and buried her face in her arms. She felt so bad that she wanted to cry. Looking out the window, it was already late at night. But the more she waited, the less sleepy she felt. The waiting time was so long, minute by minute, second by second. It was as if the clock had been delayed. Even though it felt like a century had passed, only a quarter of an hour had passed. She blamed herself for being so pretentious. They had just met in the morning. How could she miss him so much in just half a day? When she was on set, had he also waited for her so bitterly? Yun Shishir could not help but imagine a scene in her mind. In the meeting room, Mu Yaja sat at the head of the table. He looked exhausted, but he still sat up straight and listened to the meeting report. Just thinking about it made him feel tired. Even if he didn't do anything, his body wouldn't be able to take it after sitting in a chair for more than 4 hours. While worrying, he waited anxiously. Until midnight, at 10:30, there was the sound of car horns outside the door. Then, there was the sound of a car slowly parking in the garage. A few minutes later, when Muyaja opened the door and walked in, there was a light at the entrance. He threw the keys on the cabinet. Just as he took off his jacket and hung it on the hanger, the sound of his movements woke Yun Shishir, who was dozing off on the sofa. "You're back." Chapter 1689. Muyaja was stunned. He looked in the direction of the sound and turned on the lights in the living room. The lights in the living room lit up. She had been in the dark for a long time, so she couldn't adapt to the sudden bright light. She covered her eyes, and the dazzling light made her more clear-headed. She hurriedly pulled on her slippers, stood up, and said somewhat uneasily, "You're home. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Muyaja glanced at her. She seemed to have taken a shower. She was wearing thick pajamas, and her hair was draped over her shoulders. Just by looking at her, he seemed to be able to smell the shower fragrance on her body. However, when he saw the tired look on her face, he was slightly angry. "Didn't I tell you to sleep first? I clearly told you that I'll be home very late." Yun Shishir was shocked by him. She didn't expect that after waiting for so long, he would be so angry that he would reprimand her. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. She stood there uneasily, afraid that any movement would anger him. What's wrong with you?" He gave off a feeling that he was very irritable. When Muyaja saw that she seemed to be frightened, he immediately kept the cold expression on his face. He looked away and calmed down. He explained, "I didn't mean to scold you. I'm just a little tired. I'm a little angry to see that you've been waiting for me for so long." After that, he sat down at the dining table with a tired face. However, his complexion was a little bad. "I'm sorry to have worried you." Yun Shishir paused. She saw that he was frowning, his face was pale, and his eyebrows were tightly knitted. She couldn't help but feel nervous. "What's wrong?" Yun Shishir went up to him and said, "You don't seem to be feeling well." Muyaja didn't force himself and said, "My stomach hurts a little." The meeting at 4 in the afternoon lasted until 10. Because of a conflict in the case, the meeting was in a deadlock. Even when the meeting ended, they couldn't resolve it perfectly. For a full 6 hours, he still hadn't finished his meal. When the meeting ended, he didn't feel well, so he didn't stay in the office and drove home. When Yun Shishir heard that his stomach wasn't feeling well, she asked worriedly, "Did you not have dinner?" "Yes. He only ate a little for lunch." His schedule from today to tomorrow was packed, and he had no time to think about dinner. When Yun Shishir heard this, she immediately said, "Wait, I'll cook some noodles for you." Muyaja looked up and wanted to stop her, but she had already rushed into the kitchen, turned on the lights, and started the fire. He took a few deep breaths and then smiled. Even though he felt a little heartache and a little angry when he saw that she had to wait for him so late at night, but to be honest, there was someone silently waiting for him when he returned in the middle of the night. Moreover, she considerately left a lamp on for him. This kind of feeling was both warm and blissful. There was a kind of warmth of home. Warmth, he hadn't used that word in a long time. However, this woman gave him such a feeling. Warmth. This was probably the greatest meaning of marriage. To be able to spend the rest of his life with the woman he loved was the happiest thing in the world. Everything else wasn't important. 15 minutes later, Yun Shishir brought out the noodles. After she presented it to him, she sat down opposite him and rested her chin on her hands. She smiled and said, "Eat. Try my cooking. You said that you've improved." Chapter 1690. Yun Shishir stared at him in a daze. She liked looking at him like this. He was so handsome when he smiled. The moment he lowered his head, he was gentle and dashing. At that moment, she felt a surge of emotions in her heart. This is my man. This is my husband, my hubby, the person I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. At this thought, she suddenly recalled Yun Yeching's words. He urged her to ask him when the marriage was going to be settled. Yun Shishir knitted her brows. She wanted to ask, but when the words reached her lips, she swallowed them back down. Somehow, she felt that if she were to ask that, she would appear a little too unreserved. While she was letting her imagination run wild, Muyaja had already finished half a bowl of noodles. He ate quietly and elegantly. Even in such a sophisticated environment, he did not make a single sound. He was just like an upper-class aristocrat. She did not notice it at all. When she turned to look and saw that he had already eaten so much, she hurriedly asked, "How is it? Is my culinary skills okay?" He simply replied, "I'm not commenting." Yun Shishir. Why? Is my culinary skills bad? Muyaja raised his eyes to look at her and then reluctantly said, "The taste is not bad." Not bad, not bad, not bad. These three words were the most typical perfunctory words. Yun Shishir instantly deflated like a balloon. She felt that she was still far from being a virtuous wife. What's wrong? Muyaja saw the disappointment in her eyes and smiled. I thought that you've already accepted your lack of talent in cooking. Don't you know that your words are very hurtful? Muyaja nodded seriously. The truth is usually hard to listen to. Yun Shishir said angrily, if it's not good, then don't force yourself to eat it. With that, she reached for the bowl. Muyaja grabbed her hand. What are you doing? Yun Shishir pouted. Didn't you say that my culinary skills are terrible? Then don't force yourself. Since it's so hard to eat, then don't eat it. Muyaja said, you stupid woman. You don't know anything else, but you're good at distorting the meaning of others. Yun Shishir retorted, then, what do you mean? I didn't say that your culinary skills are terrible. I only said that your culinary skills are average. After all, compared to Yu's superb culinary skills, his mother's culinary skills, which were considered mediocre, could hardly catch his eye. Humph. Sorry, I don't have any culinary skills. With that said, she made a move to snatch the bowl. Muyaja refused to let her go, though. He exerted force in his arm and pulled her into his embrace. Shirshir's Yun, Shirshir's at Shirshir at Mu, Mu at Shirshir at Mu's Shirshir was Shirshir's Mu was Mu. He lowered his head and gently held her face. His thin lips curled into a smile, but it was an extremely doting smile. Madam, he spoke softly and called her so gently. His mellow and slightly hoarse voice was like a fine wine that had been sealed for half a year. It was extremely magnetic, and anyone who heard it could not help but be intoxicated. Yun Shusher's heart stopped for a moment. Even though there was no trace of it in his voice, there was still an undetectable tenderness. This tenderness was unprecedented. And because of those two words that were extremely intimate, it added a sense of indulgence. Yun Shusher was stunned. He saw that she was stunned and was slightly displeased. Why? You don't like this name? No. Chapter 1691. Why wasn't she reserved at all? He was just trying to scare her, but she was actually so. Yun Shusher's face turned slightly red, but she was a little shy. She gently bit her lips and then said shyly, "Hubby, are you done eating?" Mu Yaja smiled. He liked to see her shy look the most, especially when she was in his arms. Her shy expression was like a shy flower bud waiting to bloom, beautiful as ever. He lowered his head and whispered into her ear, "I'm done eating." His warm breath brushed against her ear. It was hot and itchy, and he couldn't stop rubbing against her. She pushed him and struggled for a moment before squirming out of his arms. Then, she glared at him coquettishly, picked up the bowl, and walked into the kitchen. Mu Yaja got up and followed her into the kitchen. There was a warm light in the kitchen. Yun Shusher put the bowl in the sink and started to wash it. He walked behind her and gently hugged her waist. He rested his chin on her shoulder and quietly watched her wash. Beside his ears was the sound of the warm water flowing quietly. His eyes were half opened. His tense mood for the entire day was finally relieved at this moment. "Hey! Can you not lean on me?" Yun Shusher said gloomily. "What's wrong? It's so heavy." Yun Shusher paused and complained, "Hubby, are you too thin? It hurts when your chin pokes me." Mu Yaja deliberately went against her and used more strength. It hurt so much that Yun Shusher sucked in a breath of cold air. She finally understood that having a sharp chin that could poke people to death was not a joke. Mu Yaja didn't have an oval face, but his facial features were well defined. His chin was thin and his lines were proud. It hurt a little when he leaned on her shoulder. "Go take a shower first. I'll tidy up." "Okay." With that, Mu Yaja went into the bathroom. Yun Shusher returned to the room after washing the dishes. She put the pajamas in the bathroom and returned to the bedroom. Half an hour later, Mu Yaja entered the room in a bathrobe. "Hubby, come here." Yun Shusher sat at the head of the bed and waved at him. When he came closer, she stretched out her arms and hooked them around his shoulders like a lazy cat. When he sat on the edge of the bed, her soft body leaned on him. A pair of white wrists clasped onto his shoulders, and her tender little face incomparably rolled up the curtains and pressed against his shoulder. She just hugged him like this but didn't say anything. In this tranquil moment, holding him made her feel incomparably at ease. Time was peaceful. She was extremely satisfied, so she couldn't help but rub her face against his shoulder again and again like a spoiled kitten. Her jet black hair was draped over his shoulders. It was as smooth as the finest brocade. It was unbelievably beautiful. Immersed in this beautiful moment, even his heartbeat calmed down for a moment. She was so adorable and charming. In his eyes, she was pleasing to the eye. Just looking at her made him think that he should love this woman even more and hold her in the palm of his hand. He couldn't let her suffer the slightest grievance. He wanted to give her the best of everything in the world. Even the stars in the sky, he wanted to pluck them down and present them to her. The best decision he had ever made in his life was to marry her. Chapter 1692. "Madam, have you thought about our wedding?" he asked gently, taking the initiative to bring up this topic. She was a little surprised as she lifted her head and looked at him. She had thought that the reason why he had asked her to register their marriage today was just a spur-of-the-moment decision. After registering their marriage, he had immersed himself in work and only returned home very late. Hence, she had thought that he had thrown his thoughts about marriage to the back of his mind. Hearing him mention it, she was inevitably surprised. Have you thought about it? Muyaja nodded. After pondering for a moment, he said, I have thought about it, but it's mainly based on your thoughts. My thoughts. Muyaja thought to himself, women will definitely want to have full control over their wedding. Girls will have many romantic fantasies about their weddings, so she will probably have a lot of ideas about it. In comparison, his romantic cells were really dead. He would rather take her opinion into consideration. Yun Shishir asked, My dad has been urging me to get engaged, but I'm actually not in a hurry for the wedding. Let's not prepare so hastily. What do you think? Muyaja nodded. I'm actually not in a hurry for the wedding. It's better to do it later. After a pause, as if he was afraid that she would misunderstand, he said, Don't let your imagination run wild. The reason why I said that I'm not in a hurry is because I have my own considerations. Although registering our marriage is simple, there are many things that we have to pay attention to when it comes to our wedding. Our wedding must be grand, just like I promised you. On that day, I will announce to the world that you are my bride. Yun Shishir was stunned for a moment. Her heart was slightly moved by his words. Muyaja lowered his head and gently kissed the corner of her lips. Following which, he said, Shishir, I promised you that I would give you the wedding of the century. Do you remember? I remember. I remember everything you said. Muyaja smiled slightly. Although the wedding is not in a hurry, there are two things that I will arrange as soon as possible. Yun Shishir couldn't help feeling puzzled and asked curiously, What are the two things? The first one is an engagement. Muyaja continued, I already have a preliminary idea about the engagement ceremony. I plan to hold our engagement ceremony on the island. After all, I hoped that the engagement would not be disturbed by any media, and I did not want to make a big fuss and hold it with only relatives and friends. After the engagement ceremony, I will hold a press conference to announce our marriage. However, I will keep your identity a secret for the time being and will not reveal it to the public. You're a public figure now. Announcing our marriage too early will only bring you unnecessary trouble. Do you understand? Yun Shishir nodded in a daze. Even though she did not understand why he did this, she understood his decision. In fact, Muyaja couldn't wait to let the whole world know about their engagement. However, it was impossible. Firstly, he decided to arrange the engagement ceremony as soon as possible. After all, what she hoped for was to give her and her family an explanation. Secondly, if the engagement ceremony was held in the near future, then it would definitely cause a sensation in the Mu family and cause unnecessary trouble. Before he settled those troublesome people in the Mu family, he would not reveal her identity to the public. Chapter 1693. Then, besides this, what's the other thing? She asked. Muyaja looked down at her and said slowly, I've decided to announce Yu's identity to the Mu family. As soon as he finished speaking, Yun Shishir looked at him. Her eyes were filled with shock and surprise. Then, there was a faint joy in her eyes. You've decided to announce his identity? Yes. Muyaja nodded. It's been 7 years. Since we're already married, I don't want to wait any longer. But, then, Yun Shishir was a little worried. You said that you want to announce Yu's identity. I'm very happy. At least, he can stand beside you openly and call you Daddy without any qualms. He doesn't have to bear the title of an illegitimate son anymore. But, if we announce Yu's identity to the Mu family, will they really accept him? They have to accept him whether they want to or not. There's no room for negotiation. Muyaja's tone was very firm. There was no room for negotiation. Yu is the heir that I've decided on. He's also the candidate to be the head of the Mu family. No one can question the person that I've decided on. His domineering style was undoubtedly reflected at this moment. Yun Shishir was surprised, happy, and touched. She seemed to have waited for this moment for too long. She was really happy for Yu to stand beside him as his son. That was great. Yu could finally call him daddy openly. Finally, he didn't have to be pointed at by other children and suspected of being an illegitimate son. But you said that Yu is the heir that you've decided on. Then, what about Xiao Yichen? Xiao Yichen isn't suitable. Mu Yaja smiled, but did not say anything. Yu was a business genius. She was smart and talented at such a young age. She was able to bring a toy company from the brink of death back to life and turn it into a business empire in just 2 years. This was truly shocking. Little Yichen, on the other hand, was not just lacking in this aspect. There was no doubt that his talent in business was not as good as Yu's. Therefore, choosing Yu as the successor of Mu Group was a decision he had made after careful consideration. However, he suddenly thought of something. He frowned and said hesitantly, "It's just that I have no choice but to accommodate you. In the Mu Jia, I may not mention your identity for the time being. Let's keep the matter of our marriage a secret for now. Don't worry." Yun Shishir thought for a moment and then smiled gently. "I'm willing to wait for you." He had promised to give her a sensational wedding of the century. She believed him and was willing to wait for that day to come. She wasn't looking forward to the sensational wedding of the century. Instead, she was looking forward to the moment when she officially placed her hand in his palm as his bride. She was willing to wait. Moreover, she was still filming. It wouldn't be too late to arrange the wedding after her career had stabilized. Moreover, he had already proposed to her. The wedding wouldn't be too far away. She could afford to wait. Since she had decided to spend the rest of her life with him, she had to trust him unconditionally. Good girl. Mu Yaja kissed her eyebrows. He didn't hide the affection in his eyes. Chapter 1694. She smiled. Her eyes were like crescent moons, and they seemed to be filled with countless little stars. It was a mesmerizing sight. He hugged her and covered both of them with the blanket. Then, he switched off the lights. He gently covered her body, and for the rest of the time, he let his body and mind sink into it. It was undeniable that Mu Yaja's actions were extremely decisive. The night before, he had promised Yun Shishir that he would announce Yu's identity to the Mu family. However, the next day, he picked Yu up from school and drove straight back to the Mu family's house. On the way, Yu changed into a small suit. He wore a white shirt, black overalls, and an elegant blazer. He looked like a noble little gentleman. He sat in the car calmly. When he heard that Mu Yaja had decided to announce his identity to the Mu family, he agreed without hesitation. That was because he did not care about anything else. He was satisfied to be able to stand beside his daddy in a dignified manner. However, when the car slowly drove into the Mu family's house, his heartbeat suddenly became erratic. Yu sat on Mu Yaja's lap and could not help but feel nervous. Will those people from the Mu family really approve of him? He was afraid that they would not. Everyone knew who he was. If his daddy announced his identity to those people, it would cause a huge uproar. Those sly old foxes in the Mu family were very scheming. Their internal interests were very complicated and involved a lot of things. What they cared about was not who he was, but who the woman behind him was. He was afraid that this time around, it would definitely be a bloodbath. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a hongmen banquet. When the car stopped at the entrance, Mu Yaja carried him out of the car. However, he suddenly noticed that his son's eyes were a little blank. His little hands were cold and sweaty. What's wrong? Nervous? He could not help but tease him. Nervous? When Yu heard that, he broke into a smile. His eyes were deep. Daddy, you're joking. How could he be nervous? Ha! My son is not someone who has stage fright. Mu Yaja smiled and carried him into the main hall of the Mu family's main residence. At this moment, all the members of the Mu family, as well as the elders of the side branches, were present. Mu Xing was there, too. However, he had been recuperating in the villa recently. Yesterday, when he found out that Mu Yaja had something important to announce in public and even gathered all the important figures of the Mu family, he also wanted to be there to see what was so important to announce. The members of the Mu family, who had been waiting anxiously for a long time, were originally gathered together and discussing animatedly. They didn't know why Mu Yaja suddenly gathered everyone. However, when they saw Mu Yaja carrying a little munchkin into the main hall, everyone was stunned. Xiaoi Chen. Mu Shumin was the first to speak. She carefully observed the child for a while, but she felt that there was something wrong with this child. Mu Linfeng suddenly frowned and said in a deep voice, "This child isn't Mu Yichen." What? Mu Shumin, on the other hand, was taken aback. Her probing gaze then landed on Yu once more. She sized him up from head to toe with her bewildered gaze as if she wanted to stare right through him. Chapter 1695. These people, who had been in the center of power for many years and had been involved in bloodshed, were all very experienced. They might not be able to tell if it was the same person at first glance, but at second glance, they could tell that something was fishy. This little guy was obviously not Mu Yichen. Then, could he be the child of the Mu family who had been left outside? They heard that his name was Yun Tianyu. Mu Shumin did not know about Yun Tianyu's matter. It was only after Mu Yanqing added a few words that she realized what was going on. However, this was followed by a sense of vigilance. This child was an outsider in her eyes. She would not accept it. Although Yun Tianyu was Mu Yaja's flesh and blood, logically speaking, it should be a joyous occasion for the Mu family to regain this lost child. However, looking at the current Mu family, no one would think so. Why? This was because this child had led a wandering life outside the family since he was young and was not close to the Mu family. In addition, the woman behind him had always been the Mu family's public enemy. A family like the Mu family was quite xenophobic towards a woman who had no power and no family background. If Yun Shishir had some background and a powerful maternal family, she might be able to gain their approval. However, Yun Shishir did not have any background, so she was seen as an outsider in their eyes. As such, this child would not be recognized by them either. Yu allowed Mu Yaja to carry her as her beautiful eyes scanned the main hall. She took in all the wariness, suspicion, and malicious looks. She mentally prepared herself. The eyes of these people didn't seem to be very friendly. It was as if an ancient and powerful tribe had seen an invading enemy. They were glaring at her covetously with a hint of hostility. It seemed that he was not welcome here. Still, it did not matter. He was here this time because he had promised his daddy. His daddy told him that he would bring him back to the Mu family and announce his identity. The little lad's first reaction was, "Where's mommy? Will you announce mommy's identity, too?" Mu Yaja said bluntly, "Now is not the time." Yu knew what he was thinking, too. The tacit understanding between father and son was often enough for them to understand each other's thoughts with just a glance or a word. The reason why he had agreed to come back was because he hoped that he could have a legitimate identity. At least in the outside world, he could calmly tell those people that Mu Yaja was his daddy and he didn't need to worry about anything. He also didn't need to bear the shameful title of an illegitimate child. However, he knew very well that his arrival might not be welcomed by the Mu family. With one look, it was indeed the case. "Daddy, put me down," Yu whispered. Mu Yaja glanced at him, then bent down and placed him on the ground. Mu Linfeng glanced at Yu, only to see the child turn around and face them without any fear. His small hands were obediently behind his back, and a confident and arrogant smile suddenly appeared on his exquisite face. He was dressed in a well-ironed suit, looking elegant and polite, which made him look like a mature gentleman. Chapter 1696. That pair of pure and beautiful eyes slowly sized them up. Then, she smiled slightly. Uncles, aunts, good evening. He was the first to speak. His voice was not loud, but he did not try to hide it either. He was calm and composed, and no one could tell that he was only 7 years old from his calm demeanor. A normal child of this age would probably hide behind his father shyly in the face of so many stern and unfriendly elders. What about him? Not only did he not avoid them, he even took the initiative to greet them. His speech was clear, neither servile nor overbearing, and his bearing was extraordinary. Perhaps it was not appropriate to describe a child as having an extraordinary bearing. Still, the child's wisdom and maturity surprised Mu Linfeng a little. Mu Shumin snorted and turned his face to the side as if he did not want to acknowledge his greeting. Mu Yanqing, on the other hand, did not want to acknowledge him as well. He merely quietly sized up this child who had appeared out of nowhere, his eyes full of judgment. Yun Tianyu scanned his surroundings, but no one dared to speak. The rules involved in this were very strict. Since Mu Shumin and Mu Linfeng did not speak, no one else dared to speak first. In terms of seniority and status, Mu Linfeng was the one with the highest authority. Even though he was not the family head, everyone was in awe of him. Mu Linfeng glanced at the child and then at Mu Yaja before asking, "Yaja, what do you mean by this?" Mu Sheng, who was sitting at the side, did not speak. He remained silent from start to finish. Mu Yaja's lips curled, but his smile was not deep. He carried Yu Yu, walked forward, and sat on the main seat, right next to Mu Linfeng. All the intimacy he displayed toward Yu Yu was, at the same time, a covert declaration to everyone that Yu Yu was rather important to him. "Today, I've gathered all of you here to make an announcement." Mu Yaja paused and looked around before speaking again. This time, he enunciated each word clearly. "This child, Mu Yaja, from now on, be it in the Mu family or outside, will be my son. No matter who it is, I don't want to hear anyone slander or belittle him. In addition, as the head of the Mu family, I'm announcing that Yun Tianyu will be the next successor of the Mu group." Speaking slowly was not his style. He was used to being swift and decisive, to the point, and to the point. However, he spoke especially slowly today, almost word by word, so that everyone present could hear him clearly. After these words were spoken, everyone present was extremely shocked. This was especially so for Mu Shumin and Mu Linfeng. Their faces turned ashen in an instant. They thought that Mu Yaja would, at most, announce Yu Yu's identity. Instead, he actually announced that Yu Yu would be the next successor of the Mu group. This surprised everyone. Mu Shumin felt the threat from the intruder, and a sense of crisis arose in his heart. What was Mu Yaja thinking? How could he acknowledge an illegitimate son as his successor? Was he not being too hasty? Mu Linfeng questioned, "What do you mean by that? Successor? Don't you think you're being too hasty by making a decision so early?" "Why? What is second uncle questioning my decision?" Chapter 1697. Mu Linfeng's tone took a step back. He knew that he had no right to ask such a question. The Mu family was like an ancient royal family, where all decisions were made by the head of the family. Regardless of right or wrong, they could only obey. Seniority was seniority. Power was power. Even though Mu Linfeng was his elder, Mu Yaja was now the family head, so he had no right to question his words. It was just that Mu Yaja could not interfere with his decision. Mu Linfeng did not approve of Yu Yu from the bottom of his heart. Hence, even though he did not say anything, his expression was still unpleasant. Yu Yu saw this and snorted inwardly. He did not care whether Mu Linfeng approved of him or not. This included everyone present. Mu Shumin gritted his teeth with hatred in his heart. His face was ashen. After a moment of silence, she said, Yaja, let's not talk about whether we approve of this child or not for the time being. Just like what your second uncle said, isn't it too hasty to appoint a successor so soon? The successor of the Mu family isn't something you can appoint just because you want to. You have to see if this child is worthy of the title and if he is outstanding enough. As soon as she finished speaking, Yu looked at her. However, his gaze deepened in an instant. Daddy, how should I address this person? Mu Yaja replied, according to seniority, you should call her grandaunt. He smiled slightly and asked politely yet sharply, hello, grandaunt. May I ask what kind of criteria are used to determine the successor's qualifications? Mu Shumin was momentarily at a loss for words. Yu smiled and sat on Mu Yaja's lap with a slightly gloomy expression. It seems that I'm not very popular in this family. However, I'm not here for anyone's approval. Neither is it for the status of the Mu family successor. Whether you approve or not, it has nothing to do with me. Looking at their faces, it was as if his appearance would threaten their interests. Indeed, the Mu family's internal interests are very tied up. Everyone was like a lion, ambitiously protecting their own territory. Facing the invaders, they were all eyeing them covetously. A threat? That would depend on whether or not he cared about the inheritance of the Mu family. He was very happy that his father had chosen him as his successor. At the very least, his father approved of him. However, this did not mean that he would accept the right of inheritance. Yu sat there with a frightening maturity and a frightening aura around him. Even though he was just a child, he gave off an intimidating aura. Forgetting his age, I revere him from the bottom of my heart. Mu Linfeng snapped back to his senses, feeling a little embarrassed. Just now, he was actually intimidated by a child. Outrageous. Yu, let's have some tea with the elders. Mu Yaja took care of her. At this moment, a servant came over with a cup of tea. Disdain was disdain, but the rules still had to be set. Under Mu Yaja's lead, Yu served tea to the elders in an orderly manner. Mu Xing received the tea from him and placed his trembling hand on the back of the boy's hand. With a smile, he said, Yu, welcome home. He really liked Yu and had high hopes for him. When he grew up, he might not be inferior to Mu Yaja at all. He was not worried about the ostracism of the rest of the family. Chapter 1698. Thank you, great-grandpa. Yu sweetly thanked him. Since Mu Xing had accepted his offer of tea, the rest of them naturally had no right to reject it. When Yu walked up to his uncle with a cup of tea in his hand, he looked up and saw the old man and the young man exchanging glances with each other. Yu knew very well that Mu Linfeng did not approve of him. What about him, though? He did not approve of this uncle-in-law either. Even if he did not approve of him, the tea had to be offered. This was a rule that must be followed. Uncle-in-law, please have some tea. Yu smiled and presented the tea in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. Mu Shumin stared nervously at Mu Linfeng, only to see him reach out to accept the tea offered by Yu. The corners of his mouth twitched as he tried his best to suppress his anger. Was he going to accept the cup of tea? Second brother. She anxiously called out to him, only to receive a warning look from him. She hurriedly lowered her head and dared not say another word. Yun Tianyu. Is that your name? Yu nodded and looked at him with smiling eyes. It's a good name. Mu Linfeng gave an ambiguous reply. He then took a sip of the tea and put it aside. His face, though, remained sullen from start to finish. After 2 rounds of toasting, both Mu Xing and Mu Linfeng had accepted the tea, so the rest could not say anything else. When Yu offered the tea to Mu Shumin's face twitched. He tried his best to soothe the discomfort in his chest and forced himself to accept the tea calmly. He took a sip and hurriedly put it aside. The rest of the process proceeded smoothly. Muyaja led him, and like a lion cub who had just inherited a territory, he followed his footsteps closely as he patrolled his territory. After going through the rules once, Yu stood in the middle of the main hall and bowed 3 times to each elder. Following that, he straightened his back. Calm and composed, he looked like a wise leader. It was impossible not to look at him in a different light. A smile flashed across the pair of black eyes that were like agates. Mu Linfeng's heart was suddenly shaken. This child would definitely have an extraordinary future. He felt a sense of crisis. On the way back, Yu, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, could not hold back his laughter any longer and started giggling. Muyaja was affected by his laughter, too, as his thin lips could not help curling into a playful smile. "Daddy, did you see Mu's expression? He looked pale the whole time. He was looking at me as if I was an invader. Then, he tilted his head. That was fun. Yu, from today onward, you are my legitimate son. No one will bully you in the future." Muyaja promised. "Daddy, since I've entered the Mu family, should I change my surname?" Yu suddenly asked. Muyaja cocked a brow. "Why? Don't you want to change it?" Mu Tianyu. Yun Tianyu smiled. "This name doesn't sound good to me. I don't want to change it, is that okay?" He then looked at him with a gentle smile. "This surname has been with me for 7 years. I've been following Mommy's surname since I was born. My surname is Mommy's and I don't want to change it." Yun Tianyu sounded better. More importantly, this name was given to him by his mommy. Chapter 1699. According to the rules, you should change your surname. Muyaja paused, then smiled helplessly. "But I'll leave it to you to decide whether you want to change it or not. Daddy, you're the best." Yu smiled contentedly. She held Muyaja's arm and leaned forward to give him a peck. "Daddy, don't worry. I won't let you down." He would become stronger. He would become so strong that no one would dare to underestimate him. No one would dare to underestimate his mommy. He told himself that he wouldn't have to wait too long for this day to come. On the other hand, the Mu family was in an uproar. Mu Shumin was furious. He slammed the table and threw a tantrum, not caring about Mu Linfeng's face at all. "Second brother, are you really going to acknowledge this child as your own? He's a bastard, and the woman behind him is very ambitious. In my opinion, this time, that woman must be fanning the flames behind the child's return to the Mu family. She probably wants to return to the Mu family to seize power. When the child returns to the Mu family, the day she enters the Mu family's door will not be far away. This woman is really playing a big game of chess. I think this was her idea from the beginning to the end. Once that boy enters the Mu family and stabilizes his foundation, won't she be able to ascend to the top and enjoy glory and wealth forever? Second brother, are you really going to sit back and do nothing?" No matter how angry Mu Shumin was, Mu Linfeng remained silent in his seat. His expression was cold, and it was obvious that he was unhappy. "Second brother, why aren't you saying anything?" Mu Shumin said angrily, "Don't you think I'm right?" Mu Linfeng slammed the table and stood up angrily. "Do you think I'm the one who came up with this? You should stop talking. I don't have a clue about this matter at the moment, so I can't say anything." As he spoke, Mu Linfeng paced back and forth in the main hall with his hands behind his back. Mu Yenqing and Mu Shumin watched him nervously, holding their breaths. In the end, he stopped in his tracks and slowly said, "But there is something I want to say. It's easy for this child to enter the Mu family, but it's not that easy to stabilize the foundation. With his words, Mu Shumin was finally relieved. He smiled to ease the atmosphere. When Yu Yu returned home, Yun Shishir was still on set. Xiao Yichen ran over. When he saw Yu Yu, his face lit up with anticipation. Yu Yu, how was it? What do you mean? Xiao Yichen was stunned. He glanced at Mu Yaja and then at Yu Yu. Didn't Daddy say that he would bring you back to the Mu family today to officially announce your identity? It's just a process. There's nothing much to say. Mu Yaja didn't know whether to laugh or cry at his little adult demeanor. This child was truly a classic example of a little mischievous child. All right. Go to sleep. Mu Yaja coaxed the two little fellows back to their room. Under Xiao Yichen's persistent pestering, he read 2 more stories before the little fellows fell asleep contentedly. When Yun Shishir returned home, Mu Yaja was in the study. She walked in and knocked on the door. Mu Yaja asked without looking up, "Are you done filming?" No, if he hadn't mentioned it, she wouldn't have thought of it. When he opened his mouth, she suddenly walked to his side and said with a strange expression, "Everyone on set treated me strangely today. I'm feeling a little creepy because of it." Chapter 1700. Strange? Mu Yaja couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. How so? It's an indescribable feeling. It's like, their attitude towards me has changed drastically overnight. Following that, she gave him a rough description of the situation in the production team. It turned out that in the past, most of the people in the crew would prioritize Lin Ji and Hua Jin. After all, they were the 2 main leads. Hence, those with more scenes would film first. Whether it was the makeup artist, the stylist, or the stylist, the order was always Hua Jin first, followed by Lin Ji, and then the supporting roles. Hence, Yun Shishir's scenes were especially slow. Sometimes, there were 2 scenes prepared for the day, one for Lin Ji and the other for Yun Shishir. Lin Ji would film first, and Yun Shishir would do her makeup and styling in advance. She would wait for Lin Ji's scenes to finish before going on set. After filming, there would be a break. This was for the director and a few crew members to take a breather. This delay could take up to an hour. Sometimes, Lin Ji's scenes would not be completed if Lin Ji's scenes were slow. If she was unlucky, Lin Ji's scenes would take an entire day, and Lin Ji would have to wait until the next day to film. Hence, in that half a month, even though the schedule was tight, she had very little time to film. The real time was spent waiting for the set and memorizing her lines. Since she had nothing to do while waiting for the set, she memorized the script over and over again until she knew it by heart. However, this kind of filming was too boring. But for some reason, when she arrived at the set today, the stylist, makeup, costume, and props all rushed up to her. Not only were they attentive to her, but they also wanted her to do everything first. After that, what made her even more speechless was that the order was completely reversed. In the past, she was the one waiting for Lin Ji. Now, it was Lin Ji's turn to wait for her. Lin Ji was so angry that she glared and questioned the crew members about why they allowed Yun Shishir to film first. The latter replied that it was the director's orders and they were just following orders. In a fit of anger, Lin Ji went to argue with Gu Xiaoyang, but in the end, he came back dejectedly. But because of this, no one said that Yun Shishir had special privileges. Everyone became friendly to her. She started with the makeup. She would film the scene first. However, what made her better than Lin Ji was that she had memorized the script very well, her emotions were on point, and her acting skills were even better. Basically, everything went smoothly after she started acting. She passed the first scene with very few NGs. Even if she did, she would always pass the second scene. Director Gu was very satisfied. Yun Shishir was very efficient. Within a day, she completed all 3 scenes on one set. Director Gu was overjoyed and gave her another 2 days off. On the way back, Yun Shishir still felt a little incredulous. So, she asked, did you inform the production crew? Yes. Mu Yaja didn't hide anything and nodded. Doesn't it feel good to have special privileges? Special privileges. This was a privilege. The way the supporting roles looked at her was different. They were looking at her suspiciously and sizing her up. What did you say to Director Gu? I don't need to say anything. Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows. I've never seen him before. Then why did he? Chapter 1701. Mu Yaja suddenly said something meaningful. Yun Shishir's face turned even redder when she heard that. Actually, there's no need for special privileges. This way, it's inevitable that there will be rumors. You don't have to care about other people's feelings. Mu Yaja smiled faintly. The reason why I'm doing this is because I hope that you can spend more time with me. You don't have to worry too much. Yun Shishir's heart softened. She suddenly went forward and hugged him. I'm sorry. I also feel that ever since I accepted this role, I don't have much time to accompany you. It's good that you have this awareness. Yun Shishir didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She hugged his shoulders and said coquettishly, but I realized something. Hubby, I think that having special privileges feels pretty good. You didn't see how those staff members who used to give me the cold shoulder and gave me the cold shoulder are trying to please me today. It's so funny. Thank you, hubby. As she spoke, Yun Shishir planted a kiss on his cheek. Mu Yaja obviously enjoyed this kiss. However, he still had to maintain a cold and calm look on his face. He even asked, is that enough to thank me? Yun Shishir pouted. What else do you want? Mu Yaja furrowed his eyebrows. He didn't smile, but his slender fingers tapped on his lips gently. He looked at her meaningfully. Yun Shishir's eyes were smiling. She hit his shoulders coquettishly and leaned closer to his face. Her soft lips touched the corner of his mouth. At this moment, the sound of slippers on the floor could be heard from outside the door. Immediately after, Yu pushed the door open and entered the room. He rubbed his eyes and asked, Daddy, when is Mommy coming back? His voice stopped abruptly when he saw the ambiguous scene in the study. Yu stared blankly at Yun Shishir, who was nestled in Mu Yaja's arms and kissing him tenderly. Then, she looked at Mu Yaja, who had a stunned look on his face. Her mouth suddenly gaped open in shock. Then, he suddenly raised his hand and covered his eyes. Wow! Daddy! Mommy! I didn't see anything. I didn't see Mommy sitting in Daddy's arms and kissing Daddy's mouth. I didn't even see it. With that, he turned around and ran back to his room. Yun Shishir abruptly left Mu Yaja's lips and rubbed her lips awkwardly, which were still stained with the residual warmth of the man's thin lips. Before she could react, she heard Yu's footsteps outside the door. He appeared at the door with his hands clasped behind his back and his head lowered. He was obviously embarrassed. I forgot to mention it. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Mommy. You guys can continue. With that, he reached out to close the door and ran back to the bedroom. Yun Shishir, Mu Yaja, what could be more embarrassing than being seen by a child while they were being intimate? Yun Shishir thought about Yu's shocked expression and his ambiguous gaze on the two of them. She felt so embarrassed that her cheeks burned. She felt a little ashamed. At this moment, she really wanted to dig a hole in the ground and bury her burning face. Mu Yaja pulled her back into his embrace unhappily and teasingly asked, What's wrong? Not continuing. If the child sees us being intimate, won't it be a bad example? Chapter 1702. She was worried that Yu would see it and it would be a bad influence. A bad example. How could that be? Muyaja laughed and said, kids these days are all smart. They know a lot. As he said that, he hugged her and smiled. Don't think too much, let's continue. Yunshushu pushed his chest, but there was a hint of wanting to say something. As he kissed her, the temperature in the study room rose. The date of the engagement was set. Yunshushu was looking forward to the engagement, but she was also nervous and uneasy. Muyaja said that the engagement ceremony did not need to be too grand. As for the guests, he would only invite some of his important relatives and friends, as well as his frequent business partners, as VIPs to bear witness. As for the female guests, they would be invited by her. Yunshushu thought for a long time and finally decided to give Gongjia a call. Sister. Gongjia's handsome and magnetic voice came from the other end of the line. Gongjia had called her a few days ago, but at that time, she was busy dealing with Yun Yeho's matter. Now that she thought about it, she had not seen him for a long time. Sister, have you been busy recently? Gongjia asked. Yunshushu pondered for a moment and smiled. Shaojia, I have something to tell you. Are you free now? What is it? Tell me. It's not convenient to talk over the phone. How about this? Are you free now? I'll treat you to a cup of coffee. Gongjia gladly agreed. Okay. They agreed to meet at the dessert shop that she frequented. Gongjia had already booked a private room. He sat by the window, about 100 meters away. His secret guards were stationed there to prevent any suspicious people from getting in. When Yunshushu arrived, he had already ordered a cup of her favorite Blue Mountain coffee. When she walked past him, he had already noticed her and looked up. You're here. He seemed to especially like windbreakers, especially snow-white windbreakers. With his silver hair and tall figure, it was impossible not to recognize him in a crowd. There was a lit cigarette between his fingers, but when he saw her, he calmly put it out. He remembered that she didn't like the smell of smoke, and she hated smoking even more. Therefore, smoking in front of her was forbidden. He had promised her that he wouldn't smoke, but he was addicted to smoking, so he took advantage of the time when she wasn't there to secretly smoke a cigarette. Who would have thought that just as he lit it, he would arrive? Gongjia's face had a touch of embarrassment from being caught red-handed. He cleared his throat and smiled, trying to cover it up. Shaojia, you're smoking again. I was wrong. He revealed his watery eyes and acted cute and coquettishly in front of her. It was an easy task. Yunshushu was helpless. She sat down in the booth and looked at the dessert he ordered for her. She couldn't help but be surprised. How do you know what I like? The last time we had afternoon tea together, these were the desserts. I remember them all. He remembered every detail about her. Her favorite desserts, coffee, snacks, he remembered them all. Yunshushu smiled warmly and was touched by his thoughtfulness. Gongjia gazed at her tenderly, barely concealing the adoration in his eyes. He took a sip of his coffee and asked, Sis, I was overseas a while ago. I brought you a small gift when I returned this time. As he spoke, he placed an exquisitely wrapped gift box in front of her. Yunshushu was a little surprised. Gift? What gift? Chapter 1703. Yunshushu was a little surprised. Gift? What gift? Gongjia rested his chin on his hand lazily and winked at her. Open it and take a look. Okay. Yunshushu carefully opened the gift and saw that it was an extremely exquisite Omega watch. Compared to men's mechanical watches, women's watches were gentle and reserved. However, the ring of diamonds on the watch face was luxurious. Omega watches were expensive, and custom-made ones were even more expensive. To Yunshushu, this gift was obviously too expensive. This. Is it very expensive? Yun Shishir knitted her brows. She obviously didn't want him to spend so much money. Gong Jie's handsome brows raised slightly, but he couldn't help but laugh. Sis, do you still remember? This watch is the gift I promised to give you. Just as he finished speaking, Yun Shishir suddenly remembered that there was a reason for this watch. When Yun Shishir was young, she had an Omega watch. It was Mu Wanra's watch that she always wore. She liked it very much, so her mother gave it to her and let her wear it. She had always cherished this watch and couldn't bear to break it. In her heart, it was a rare treasure. However, there was once when Gong Jia secretly took the watch that she hid in the drawer out to play. In the end, he accidentally lost it. He felt guilty, so he didn't dare to mention it. When Yun Shishir couldn't find her watch and cried sadly, he helplessly hugged her in his arms. He was both regretful and helpless. He could only coax her and say, Shishir, don't cry. When I have money in the future, I'll definitely give you the best watch in the world. Only then did she stop crying and say, this is what you promised me. You can't go back on your words. Even though it had been a long time, so long that even she had forgotten about it, he didn't forget. This time, he went overseas to escort a batch of goods out to sea. When he returned to Europe, he bought this watch. For the Gong Jia of today, the value of a watch did not depend on how expensive it was, but on whether she liked it or not. As for Yun Shishir, whether she liked it or not didn't matter what brand or price it was. As long as it was a gift from him, she would like it. Yun Shishir held the box and looked at the watch lying inside. She liked it very much and her face was full of satisfaction. Gong Jia smiled. When he saw her smiling eyes staring at the watch, he knew very well that she liked it. Thus, he said gently, come, I'll put it on for you. Then, he picked up the watch and adjusted it. Then, he gently lifted her wrist and carefully put the watch on her wrist. Gong Jia lowered his head and seriously adjusted the buckle for her. Yun Shishir laughed and said, I was just joking at that time. I just didn't expect you to remember. I thought you forgot. How could I forget? I will remember what I promised you. Gong Jia paused and looked up. His eyes seemed to be filled with countless stars. When he smiled, his eyes curved and looked extremely beautiful. I still remember that I promised you that if you got married, would personally hand your hand to that man. Yun Shishir's expression suddenly froze. She couldn't help but look up and stare deeply at him. However, at this moment, she saw that he had already lowered his head and was adjusting the time for her. Shao Jia, if I get married, will you give me your blessings? She asked carefully. Chapter 1704. He raised his head and looked at her with a strange expression. For a moment, too many emotions flashed across his eyes. She could not see anything clearly. Sis. Are you getting married? Gong Jia's handsome brows furrowed slightly, but he looked a little dazed. Yun Shishir saw that his expression was a little strange, and she could not help but be a little surprised. What's wrong, Shao Jia? Nothing. Gong Jia came back to his senses from his complicated thoughts. He looked up and exchanged glances with her. His handsome eyes suddenly deepened. You're getting married. Yes. Yes. Why so sudden? I've never heard you mention it before. Yun Shishir tugged at the corner of her lips and smiled awkwardly. Previously. I didn't tell you because I didn't know how to bring it up. Moreover, the wedding date hasn't been set yet. We're only planning to hold the engagement ceremony first. As she spoke, she reached out and placed her hand on the back of his hand. Smiling gently, she said, "This is what I wanted to talk to you about. Shao Jia, will you attend my engagement ceremony? Will you give me your blessings?" Gong Jia suddenly felt a little frustrated. However, this frustration did not show on his face. Gong Jia lowered his eyelids as many fragmented memories flashed through his mind. The nightmarish memories of his youth resurfaced in his mind. Those memories, accompanied by the firelight, seemed to break out of a cocoon in an instant. For a moment, the space between his brows throbbed with a splitting headache. Gong Jia rubbed the space between his brows a little anxiously, looking a little conflicted and anxious. Suddenly, he asked, "Do you really want my blessings?" "Of course," Yun Shishir said matter-of-factly, "because you're my most important relative in this world. Of course, it's very important to be able to receive your blessings." Gong Jia sucked in a deep breath of cold air before replying calmly, "You asked me if I'll give you my blessings, but my answer depends on who you've chosen." Yun Shishir was stunned. She sensed that there was a deeper meaning in his words. Gong Jia narrowed his eyes, but his voice was slightly colder. "Sis, who is he?" What? "Who is the man you married?" Yun Shishir laughed dryly. "Is it important who he is?" "He." Gong Jia abruptly interrupted her. His voice was soft but heavy. "That man is Mu Yaja, isn't he?" Yun Shishir was stunned and looked at him in disbelief. "You? How did you know?" Gong Jia clenched his fists but didn't answer the question directly. Instead, he said firmly, "If it's this man, then my answer is no." Yun Shishir widened her eyes in shock. His answer was so unexpected that for a moment, she even suspected that she had misheard him. "I'm sorry. There's only one thing I can't do." Gong Jia was afraid that she didn't hear him clearly, so he repeated, "If you want to be with this man, I'm sorry, I can't do it." Yun Shishir seemed to have lost her voice at that moment. She was stunned for a long time before she asked in a daze, "Why?" "Because I hate the Mu family." The last 4 words were said with gritted teeth. At the mention of the Mu family, Gong Jia's handsome eyes were filled with unconcealable hatred. Chapter 1705. Gong Jia said, "Sis, do you know? The Gong and Mu families have an irreconcilable feud between them. If not for Mu Xing, Mother wouldn't have died in the fire that day. That man is the cruelest executioner. He caused Mother's death and indirectly caused you to wander about, causing us to be separated for 15 years. He suddenly grabbed her wrist forcefully. Unlike his usual elegance and nobility, the hand that held her wrist contained a terrifying amount of strength. Yun Shishir forgot to dodge or struggle as she stared at him in shock. 15 years. How many 15 years do we have in life? We should have been together forever and never been separated. It's all his fault, he's the real culprit. Don't you hate him?" Yun Shishir blurted out, "I do." "You hate him?" "Of course, I hate him." Yun Shishir sounded agitated. "Of course, I know that he's the culprit behind Mother's death. He can't escape punishment. No matter how I persuade myself, I can't forgive him. I can't forgive him for the rest of my life." Pausing for a moment, she suddenly sighed, her voice filled with exhaustion. She held her forehead, her eyes filled with sadness. "But this is already the grudge of the previous generation. Must I hold on to the past and not let it go? Aren't you the one who's holding on to the past and not letting it go?" Gong Jia was a little overbearing. "You've never admitted your Gong bloodline. Aren't you also holding on to the past and not letting it go? I want to bring you back to the Gong family, but you don't want to." "Why?" Yun Shishir's eyes were filled with determination. "I'm not from the Gong family." "You are." Gong Jia was a little angry at her double standard. "The blood of the Gong family flows in your veins. You're the Gong family's young mistress. No matter how long you've been away from home, you can't hide the fact that you're from the Gong family." "Shao Jia, then give me a reason. Tell me, why are you unwilling to acknowledge the Gong family?" Yun Shishir was shocked and angry. She had never seen such a terrible Gong Jia. He grabbed her hand and didn't let go. His words were sharp. Say it. Father has always hoped to find you. Now that he has found you, why don't you acknowledge him? Since you said that the Gong and Muyaja families have a deep grudge against each other, then if you let me reunite with that man, he will definitely not let me be together with Muyaja. I was afraid, so I didn't want to acknowledge him. She suddenly broke down, tears welling up in her eyes. Gong Jia pursed his thin lips and frowned deeply, but he was speechless for a moment. But, what does the feud between the Gong and Mu families have to do with him? I love him. He has never done anything wrong. He protects me, cherishes me, and makes me feel that I am not alone in this world. He always appears when I need him the most and protects me behind him. Even if I cause trouble, I'm willful, and I'm unreasonable, he will still accept me unconditionally. Yun Shishir took a deep breath and said, I love him, but I know that if I reunite with my biological father, he will definitely not sit back and do nothing. But he's our father. You shouldn't give up on reuniting with him for a man. Chapter 1706. Gong Jia was stunned. He frowned but did not say anything. Yun Shishir slowly fell back into her seat. She lowered her head and her shoulders trembled slightly. Gong Jia said in a low voice, Sister, give up. Leave him, okay? Sister, it's impossible between you and him. Gong Jia sat down and placed his warm palm on the back of her hand. Come back to the Gong family with me. I'll make you understand that you deserve someone better. What's better? Yun Shishir looked up and was puzzled. Shao Jia, tell me, what's the best? I can't answer you. You can't answer me because you've never loved anyone. Gong Jia was even more speechless. Indeed, in all these years, he had never loved anyone. What was love? He did not understand. He did not understand why they had to get married. Why did they have to stay together for the rest of their lives? To him, women were just a vague and unfathomable existence. He's the best in my heart. No one can replace him. Gong Jia frowned. Are you sure he truly loves you? If he loves you, why did he not announce your marriage after acknowledging Yu's identity? Yun Shishir was shocked. Then, anger flashed in her eyes. Are you investigating me? Gong Jia's face froze. How do you know so much? Yun Shishir asked aggressively, Shao Jia, what do you do for a living? How do you know so much about some things? You told me that you have a company. What company is it? Gong Jia hesitated for a moment and said slowly, if you're willing to come back to the Gong family with me, I'll be honest with you. Honest? Yun Shishir's eyes suddenly turned cold. So, you've been hiding it from me all this time. Gong Jia, you actually hid the truth from me. Shao Jia, I trusted you a lot, but why did you lie to me? Yun Shishir felt hurt and asked in disbelief, what are you hiding from me? She felt a chill in her heart. She had been looking forward to receiving her brother's heartfelt blessings for this meeting. However, what did he get in return? He actually hid it from her. I didn't. There are some things that I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to hurt you. You hurt me, and then you tell me that I don't want to hurt you. Don't these words sound a little pompous? Yun Shishir took a deep breath. I trusted you and was willing to tell you everything, but you hid a lot of things from me. Good. Since you said that you trust me and are willing to tell me everything. Then, let me ask you. Gong Jia suddenly got up, held her shoulder, deep handsome eyes condensed her, not allowing her eyes to have a trace of room to dodge. What happened when you were 18 years old? Yun Shishir froze as if she had been struck by lightning. He asked her what happened when she was 18 years old. But how should she answer him? How should she answer this question? Chapter 1707. Gong Jia paused for a moment and said, Sis, since I've found you, I have many ways to investigate your past. But I don't want to. I want you to tell me personally. Now, tell me, what happened when you were 18 years old? You had a child out of wedlock at 18 years old. This shouldn't have happened. Why did it happen to you? He suddenly asked suspiciously. Did he? No. Yun Shishir suddenly interrupted him. It's not what you think. Don't let your imagination run wild. Then answer me. Gong Jia was a little nervous and uneasy. Sis, tell me what happened, okay? The child was born from a surrogate. Gong Jia couldn't react for a moment. Yun Shishir felt greatly humiliated. In fact, she had never regretted the decision she had made that year. That was because the surrogacy incident had coincidentally brought her the most precious gift in her life. Yu was like the most precious gift God had given her. Therefore, no matter how humiliating it was to talk about it, she still didn't regret it. If she were 18 years old again, she would probably make the same decision again. However, even though she didn't regret it, for a woman like her to say it herself, it was inevitable that she would feel embarrassed. Therefore, when she said that the child was born from a surrogate pregnancy, Gong Jia was puzzled and didn't understand for a moment. Or rather, it could be said that he didn't think in that direction. It wasn't until he coldly repeated the word surrogacy twice in his heart that he suddenly realized what was going on. Surrogate pregnancy. He tried his best to lower his voice and asked her back, is that what you mean by surrogate pregnancy? After a pause, he lowered his voice again. Why? Why did you do this? Suddenly, he thought of something and his voice suddenly became cold. Who forced you to do this? No one. Yun Shishir explained, no one forced me. I did it willingly. When Gong Jia heard this, he was so angry that he was at a loss for words. Then, he said bitterly, why did you do this? Why did he have to ruin himself like this? A girl who was as delicate as a flower at the age of 18 had become a surrogate mother for a strange man, gave birth to 2 children, and became a mother at such a young age. Why would such a ridiculous thing happen to her? Gong Jia was still in disbelief. Under his doubtful gaze, Yun Shishir quickly regained her calm and rational expression. Slowly, pretending to be calm, she told him the whole story of what happened 18 years ago. She tried her best to be concise and comprehensive. She skipped over some insignificant chapters and explained the reason why she had made this decision to him from beginning to end. She had been mistreated in the orphanage since she was 9 years old, and her identity had been swapped. Ever since she was adopted by the Yun family, Yun Yeqing had treated her like his own daughter and doted on her. Ever since the Yun family went bankrupt, she had been forced to make a living. She also had a sense of responsibility. In order to share the Yun family's debt, she had made this decision on a whim. She had been pregnant for 8 months and had given birth prematurely. One child was born healthy and was taken away. The other child was born without breathing. Due to a freak combination of factors, she had raised them by her side. She recounted everything in detail. Chapter 1708. I know that you might not understand why I made such a ridiculous decision. But I have no other choice. Do you know? I really can't just sit back and do nothing. The year the Yun family went bankrupt was also the coldest winter in history. The reason why she made such an unconventional decision was that she had witnessed the loan sharks knocking on her door time and time again. Those bloody threats, as well as the insolence with daggers, had forced the family to stand on the 13th floor's rooftop and threatened Yun Yeqing to repay the debt on the spot. If he could not do so within an hour, he would be pushed down by one of them. Yun Na was so scared that she wet her pants on the spot. She cried her heart out, but no one cared about her. Yun Yeqing kowtowed to each family and begged until his head bled. Only then did he manage to scrape together enough interest to send these demons of plague away. Another time, the debt collection company had dragged her into the snow and poured a basin of ice water over her head. It was -5 degrees Celsius, and the bone-chilling cold seeped into her bones from every pore. She was so cold that she shivered and fainted on the spot. When she woke up, Yun Yeching was covered in injuries. It seemed that he had been taught a lesson by those lawless people. Because of that incident, there was a heavy chill in her body. Even now, her body was still weak. Not only that, she even witnessed with her own eyes how her father was dragged to the neighborhood's fountain. In the cold weather, they grabbed his hair and pressed him into the icy fountain, causing his face to turn red from the cold. How could she just sit back and do nothing? How could she pretend that it was none of her business? She only resorted to this when she was at her wit's end. If she did not think of a solution at that time, the Yun family would really be finished. Yun Shishir lowered her head heavily. Her hands fell limply on the table, and her fingers were intertwined with each other. She felt lonely and helpless. The wounds that had already scabbed over were once again torn open with blood dripping from them. The pain was heart-wrenching. She originally did not want to recall those nightmarish scenes. Gong Jia looked at her isolated and helpless appearance and felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly torn open. The pain was so painful that it numbed him. "I'm sorry, sister." Gong Jia sat beside her helplessly, hugged her shoulders, and hugged her tightly. His heart was filled with regret. He was so stupid and made her angry again. Ever since they were young, he always seemed to make her angry. But he didn't want to. "I'm sorry." He apologized sincerely again and again. His bewildered look was like a child who had done something wrong. He was trembling with fear and had a hint of a spoiled child. Yun Shishir's heart softened under his comforting words. She softened her tone and said, "Shao Jia, I've never wanted to hide anything from you. It's just that I really want to forget these things. But since you want to know, I'll be honest with you." "Stop talking." Gong Jia stopped her in time. "I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have forced you to think about these things. I shouldn't have reminded you of these things." As he spoke, he gently caressed her cheeks. His gentle voice was filled with guilt. "Sister, I know I was wrong. Forgive me, okay? Then, will you come to my engagement ceremony?" Yun Shishir asked, her eyes filled with anticipation. Gong Jia stared into her eyes for a moment, then replied, "Let me think about it, okay?" "Okay. I won't force you, but I also hope that you will be present at the most important moment of my life." Chapter 1709. Gong Jia's heart softened. "Sis, there's one thing that won't change. Sis, I won't let you suffer anymore. If anyone bullies you, I'll be the first to return the favor." Yun Shishir was amused by his serious look. She did not know whether to laugh or cry as she said, "As long as you don't cause trouble for me like when we were young, it'll be fine." Gong Jia defended himself aggrievedly, "I'm not a child anymore." Yun Shishir smiled and said, "But in my heart, you'll always be." She hugged his shoulders and patted his head gently, just like when they were young, when he hid under her blanket in fear at night and she comforted him. "Shao Jia, be good. Sis loves you." Gong Jia smiled in satisfaction and hugged her affectionately. Ever since she parted ways with Gong Jia that day, Yun Shishir had been feeling inexplicably uneasy. She did not know if Gong Jia would come to her engagement, nor did she know if he would accept her choice. However, once she had set her mind on someone, she would not change her mind even if her brother tried to stop her. In the past, she was a little cowardly. When she encountered something, she would subconsciously escape and retreat. But this time, she decided to face it bravely. No matter what, she would protect him silently in her own way. Now that the engagement date had been confirmed, she decided to shop around the mall during the break to choose a suit for Muyaja. Even though she knew that his suit would be prepared by someone However, she decided to choose one for him personally. This time, she was fully prepared. She wrapped herself up fully. Since the weather was turning cold, she wore a down jacket, a pair of black sunglasses, a cotton cap, and a mask. It was almost impossible to recognize her when she walked on the streets. Yun Shishir drove to the mall and went to the Armani counter. With Mu Shi's company, she began to choose a suit. After choosing a few suits, she asked the counter staff, but one of them did not have the size she wanted. It had to be said that Mu Yaja was too tall, so it was very suitable for the British, European, and American style. However, even if it was suitable, she would often encounter situations where the size was not available. Fortunately, the suit she liked the most was available in a size. "I'll take these two. Can you give me the order?" She picked 2 suits and handed them to the shop assistant. The shop assistant nodded and asked her to wait for a while before she went to make the order. While Yun Shishir was sitting on the sofa and waiting, an uninvited guest suddenly appeared at the counter. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of an extremely familiar figure. Her heart froze for a moment, and she suddenly thought of a phrase: enemies often cross paths. Song Anya, who was dressed elegantly in a pair of 10-centimeter high heels, casually strolled into the counter. Song Yunshi's birthday was approaching, so she decided to choose a suit as a gift. However, there was such an unfortunate fate. As soon as Song Anya entered the counter, she saw the figure sitting quietly on the sofa and recognized Yun Shishir at first glance. Even though Yun Shishir was dressed very formally when she went out and was wrapped tightly from head to toe, her charm and temperament would not change no matter how well she dressed. In addition, Yun Shishir had long hair and a good figure. Even if she was wrapped in a thick down jacket, it was difficult to hide her exquisite figure. Chapter 17:10. Yun Shishir. As soon as she opened her mouth, Yun Shishir's body stiffened. She knew that she could not hide from her sharp eyes. With a sinister smile, Song Enya walked up to her, stopped in her tracks, and looked down at her condescendingly. "What a coincidence. Are you shopping at the mall, too?" Yun Shishir ignored her. Song Enya ignored her cold and distant attitude and sneered as she sized her up from head to toe. "What's that saying again? Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Hee, I didn't expect to meet you today. This world is really small, there are *cheese blocking your way everywhere you go." Yun Shishir's lips twitched a little. She wanted to say that, too. This world is really small, there are irksome people everywhere you go. Just as the atmosphere turned cold, the salesperson at the counter came over with a list and greeted her respectfully. "Madam, the list is ready. May I know if you'd like to pay by cash or card?" "I'll pay by card." "Thank you," Yun Shishir said politely. With that, she stood up and, as if Song Enya was invisible, walked around her to the counter, and took out a card from her wallet. Just as the salesperson came over with the card machine, Song Enya sneered again. "You're buying a suit. Hee. Are you buying it to please Brother Mu?" Yun Shishir continued to ignore her. Song Enya, however, did not seem to know what was good for her. It was as if she was trying her best to provoke her. "What? Do you think you can win Brother Mu's favor by buying a suit? Is this one of your tricks? You're so old-fashioned. If it were me, I wouldn't know this trick. Brother Mu doesn't like it." Yun Shishir passed the card to the salesperson as if there was no one else around. The salesperson, however, was stunned by their exchange. Somehow, she felt that these two seemed to know each other and had a deep hatred for each other. Seeing that the salesperson was stunned, Yun Shishir kindly reminded her, "Hello, please pay by card." As he spoke, he waved the card in his hand in front of her. Song Enya was infuriated to see Yun Shishir ignoring her from the start to the end. However, she did not flare up on the spot for the sake of the situation. She took a deep breath and steadied herself. Then, she said in a strange tone, "This card belongs to Brother Moo, right?" A certain someone was really shameless. She kept insisting that she was not a mistress. Hee hee. She was using Brother Moo's card and spending Brother Moo's money. She was clearly a mistress. How can you be so shameless? Her voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. It was loud enough for everyone present to hear clearly. There were other customers at the counter, as well as the clerk, and everyone heard her taunts clearly enough. Yun Shishir was humiliated mercilessly in front of everyone. In the end, she was infuriated. The salesperson looked down and decided to ignore the farce. After swiping the money, she handed the card back to her. Yun Shishir kept the card, picked up the suit, and turned to leave. Seeing that the other was ignoring her and was about to leave, Song Enya rushed forward relentlessly. However, Yun Shishir stopped abruptly in her tracks. Coincidentally, Song Enya had rushed forward. Hence, she retreated slightly without mercy and stepped on the tip of the other's foot with her high heels. "Ah!" Song Enya cried out in pain. With a pained expression, she grabbed Yun Shishir's wrist. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, flung her hand away expressionlessly. She turned around coldly and fearlessly met her gaze. Chapter 17:11. Song Enya, have you had enough? Yun Shishir looked at her coldly. Her arrogant eyes made her seem as though she was looking at a lowly animal. "Please don't bite me like a rabid dog and refuse to let go. You'll only make me feel very troubled." Both of them were wearing high heels, but Yun Shishir was half a head taller than Song Enya, so she could look down on her. Song Enya raised her head to look at Yun Shishir, who had suddenly flared up, and froze in shock. Then, as though she had heard a joke, she pointed at herself. Her exquisitely made-up face contorted. "Mad dog." Song Enya was completely enraged as she asked hysterically, "Who are you calling a mad dog?" "You heard me clearly. Who am I talking about?" "Song Enya, your brain is damaged, but don't tell me your ears are damaged as well." Compared to Song Enya's unreasonable tantrum, Yun Shishir's rational and calm appearance set off the latter's uncultured upbringing. The crowd could not help but gather around curiously. When the staff at the counter saw this, she hurriedly stepped forward and politely declined the nosy onlookers by ushering them to the side. The staff liked Yun Shishir very much. Even though they had not interacted much since just now, Yun Shishir's politeness and elegance were genuine. Compared to the arrogant Yun Shishir was more like a gentle and virtuous daughter of a wealthy family. She was also very respectful toward her, so the staff acknowledged her from the bottom of her heart. It was just that she seemed to have heard this woman being called an underground lover. Was that really the case? She did not think so, though. From Yun Shishir, she could see that she was a role model and was not as tasteless as Song Enya made her out to be. "Yun Shishir, you." Song Enya was so angry that her face turned red. Her face was contorted, and she actually looked a little hateful. She was so angry that she took 2 deep breaths and suddenly broke into a smile. "Yun Shishir, what's wrong? Are you angry because I hit the nail on the head? Just because I revealed the fact that you're an underground mistress, you're angry out of humiliation, aren't you?" Song Enya laughed in disdain again. "Do you believe that I can ruin your reputation with just a word? Yun Shishir, I'm warning you, stay away from Brother Moo. Don't go overboard when the time comes, or I don't mind purging you." Ha! These words were truly arrogant and ruthless. Purge. Did she really think that the current era was a centralized system of the ancient royal family, so she wanted to use her status as a relative of the royal family to purge her? Her brain was really not working. Yun Shishir smiled elegantly and said, "You're the mayor's daughter. Just like what you said, you're a princess who lives like a prince. Perhaps, with just one sentence, you can smear my reputation to the point that I'm worthless. Still, Song Enya, please take a good look at your status." Since she was the mayor's daughter, she should at least be careful with her words and actions. This is a basic quality. Don't throw away your family's demeanor in public. Pausing for a moment, she picked up the bank card that the shop assistant had returned to her and waved it in front of Song Enya with an elegant smile. Also, this bank card is mine. Every cent and decimal point in it was earned by me. Isn't it natural for me to use my own money to buy a suit for my man? Chapter 17:12. Song Enya found it hard to reason with her. Is Yun Shusher crazy? She thought to herself. What? Man. Your man. She repeated herself. Then, she sneered coldly. Following that, her eyes flashed with jealousy and hatred. She stared at her like a needle. What do you mean by, your man? Let me put it another way, then. Yun Shusher's lips curled into a smile as she stared into the other's eyes. I used the money I earned to buy my husband a gown. Miss Song, do you understand what I'm saying now? Song Enya was stunned for a moment as if she had been struck by lightning. When she came back to her senses, she clenched her fists tightly and walked up to Yun Shusher, scolding, B*TCH. Shameless. Shameless people are invincible. Yun Shusher, how can you be so shameless? B*TCH. She flew into a rage out of humiliation and uncontrollably raised her hand high to slap her. Yun Shusher blocked the other's slap and gripped the other's wrist tightly. Ah! Song Enya shrieked in pain again, only to see Yun Shusher furrowing her brows. Her eyes gradually turned cold as she gave her a hard slap on the face. Paw! A sound was heard. The slap was crisp and resounding. Song Enya's eyes widened as she held her stinging cheek. She could feel that half of her face had gone numb from the slap. Yun Shusher slapped her with all her might. She felt a jolt in her head, which was followed by a great sense of grievance and anger. She actually slapped her. This Yun Shusher actually slapped her. Song Enya's eyes welled up with tears of grievance as she glared at her. Her resentful eyes were like a venomous snake eyeing its prey as they slowly coiled around her neck, revealing its sharp and poisonous fangs. Yun Shusher, how dare you hit me? Only you are allowed to hit others, but I'm not allowed to hit you. Miss Song, you're so arrogant. Yun Shusher raised her wrist and looked at her watch. Seeing that it was getting late, she didn't want to deal with her anymore, so she turned around and was about to leave. Song Enya, on the other hand, covered her face with her hands as she mockingly shouted from behind, Yun Shusher. You're really indulging in fantasy. You said that Brother Mu was your husband. Yun Shusher, it's daytime now. Are you daydreaming? You haven't woken up yet. Yun Shusher suddenly stopped in her tracks and turned around with a cold expression. She cast a sidelong glance at her and asked indifferently, You're the one who didn't wake up, right? Yun Shusher, who do you think you are? You're just a canary in a cage. How dare you say that Brother Mu was your husband? He can't be, and he won't be in this lifetime. With that, the Missy pointed a finger at the woman, completely disregarding the fact that they were in public and insulting her as if no one was around. This woman is an underground mistress. A homewrecker. You're daydreaming and delusional enough to say that the card in your hand isn't Brother Mu's. You're so shameless that you're pretending to be serious even when you're lying. Do you think I'll believe you? Yun Shusher was not angry when she heard that. That was because she was not afraid of crooked shadows. The card in her hand was earned by herself. 10 million yuan was not a huge sum, but it was the money she earned from filming and advertising. This was all money she earned through her own efforts. However, as she sized up the Missy's eyes, which were red with jealousy, Yun Shusher suddenly had an evil thought. Chapter 17:13. Yun Shusher smiled arrogantly but appeared to be righteous. My husband's bank card is in my custody. What's wrong with that? Besides, isn't it only right for a husband to give his wife the money he earns? What right do you have to be jealous of me? Jealous? Why should I be jealous of you? Yun Shishir shook her head and sighed. You're still saying that you're not jealous. Your eyes are red. What a joke. Yun Shishir, let me tell you, Brother Mu will never marry you. Yun Shishir suddenly interrupted her. Song Anya, we've registered our marriage. Song Anya was stunned when she heard this. Registered our marriage? Yes. You're lying. Why you're lying? Yun Shishir was not angry. Instead, her lips curled into an elegant smile. What's there to lie about? Ha! Song Anya, aren't you very capable? You have plenty of ways to verify whether I'm lying or not, right? With that, she picked up the shopping bag and left without looking back. Song Anya was so shocked that she could not regain her senses. For a moment, she even forgot to chase after her to clarify things. Yun Shishir's earlier words sounded very serious and did not seem to be a lie. For a moment, she felt guilty instead. She was in disbelief. Impossible. How could Brother Mu marry this woman? Was he serious? When Song Anya thought that Yun Shishir might be telling the truth and that she and Brother Mu had really registered their marriage, she was so anxious that tears fell from her eyes. Just as Yun Shishir had said, if Song Anya wanted to verify this matter, she had plenty of ways to do so. When Song Yunshi received Song Anya's anxious call, he rushed home and saw Song Anya curled up in a corner of the sofa with red eyes from crying. Seeing Song Yunshi return, Song Anya threw herself into her husband's arms, feeling aggrieved and agitated. Tears flowed down her cheeks uncontrollably. For a moment, Song Yunshi was at a loss for what to do. He did not know who it was that made his beloved sister suffer such grievances. He hurriedly asked what had happened and who had bullied her. Sobbing, Song Anya recounted the whole story to him. When Song Yunshi heard this, she was both angry and exasperated. Anya, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you're clearly asking for humiliation. Didn't I tell you that it's impossible between you and Uncle Mu? So, you should give up. Brother. No, don't be so heartless. She pleaded helplessly, please, can you help me with something? What is it? That B*TCH said that she and Brother Mu have already registered their marriage. Help me check if this is true. Please, please. No. Song Yunshi shook his head and rejected her decisively. If Uncle Mu finds out about this, I'll be in a difficult position. No, he won't. Brother is so powerful, I won't let him know. As Song Anya spoke, she pleaded again and again, please, help me. I swear, brother. I swear, if Brother Mu really marries this woman, then I'll completely give up on him. These words moved Song Yunshi. He glanced at her doubtfully. Really? Yes. Really? Song Anya solemnly promised. Song Yunshi wavered. Chapter 17:14. If investigating this matter could make this lass give up on Muyaja, then it might be worth the risk. Hence, Song Yunshi made a call to a close friend and reminded her about this matter. On her end, when she heard that she wanted to investigate Muyaja, she panicked. After all, no matter the field, Muyaja's name was like thunder to one's ears. Ordinary people would be in awe of him when they heard his name. Song Yunshi explained that she only needed to investigate Muyaja's marital status and did not need to do anything else. When she heard that she only needed to investigate his marital status, she nodded in agreement. Not long after, Song Yunshi's phone sent a photo. It was a photo taken with a phone camera. In the photo, there was a system interface showing Muyaja's marital status. The information showed that he was married, and his spouse's name was Yun Shishir. When Song Yunshi saw this, she heaved a sigh of relief and handed the phone to Song Enya. Song Enya took the phone and was stunned for a few seconds. Suddenly, as if half of her energy had left her, she fell onto the sofa in a daze with an expressionless face. Song Yunshi said, "Now, you can give up. Uncle Mu is really married." Before she could finish speaking, Song Yunshi saw from the corner of her eye that Song Enya had suddenly pursed her lips tightly. Tears welled up in her eyes as she broke down and cried. "I don't believe it. I really don't believe it." Sob, sob, sob. "Impossible. How is this possible? Brother Mu. How can Brother Mu be married? It's a lie, it's all a lie." Sob, sob, sob. Song Enya seemed to have collapsed as she cried helplessly. It was as if the world was collapsing and doomsday was coming. This picture had completely destroyed all of her psychological defenses. She felt as if she had been slapped several times on the face. Yun Shishir was indeed not lying. They were really married. However, she couldn't figure it out. How could Brother Mu be sincere to her? He was such a cold-hearted person. If she couldn't get it, why should Yun Shishir get it? Yun Shishir's words echoed in her ears. "Isn't it natural for a husband to give his wife the money he earns? What right do you have to be jealous of me?" That's right. What position did she have? What right did she have to be jealous of Yun Shishir? After all, she was already Brother Mu's legal wife. Song Yunshi could not bear to see Song Enya cry sadly. She walked over and hugged her. "Enya, I know you're very sad. However, this is reality. You should learn to accept it." "How can I accept that?" Feeling aggrieved, Song Enya retorted, "Brother Mu is married to her. How am I supposed to accept this?" "Woo woo woo. You should give up completely. This is what you promised your brother. Enya, you can't go back on your words," Song Yunshi said. Song Enya bit her lip. Her eyes were filled with despair for a moment, but her tears did not stop falling. She secretly clenched her fists. There was only one voice that kept echoing in her heart: "No one can have what I can't have." "Yun Shishir, are you very smug? Do you think that you have the whole world just because you have Brother Mu? Ha ha. If I can't have his heart, then no one can have him. It's the same no matter who it is." Chapter 17:15. A luxurious Bentley was parked at the school gate. The school bell rang loudly. Just as Yun Tianyu stepped out of the school gate, his phone rang. Seeing that it was Gong Jie's number, he picked it up and squinted his eyes. "Uncle, what's the matter?" "I'm waiting for you at the school gate." He looked around and finally spotted an extremely luxurious Bentley by the roadside. He walked over, and the chauffeur immediately alighted and respectfully opened the door to the back seat for him. The little lad was about to get into the car when he saw the child safety seat installed at the back seat. The corner of his eyes twitched violently. "This is a child safety seat," the Gong Jia explained and then smiled gently. "Uncle dotes on you, so I'm here to pick you up. I specially installed it for you." Yu rolled his eyes. "D*MN idiot. I'm not sitting in it." "Why?" "This seat isn't comfortable to sit in." The Gong Jia smiled. "Then, sit on Uncle's lap, okay?" Yu rolled his eyes again. D*MN idiot. Who wants to sit on your lap? The Gong Jia did not give him a chance to explain. He stretched out his arms and pulled him onto his lap to protect him. He then ordered, "Start the car." "Yes." The car slowly started moving. On the way, Yu looked warily at the passing scenery outside the car window and asked suspiciously, "Where are you going to abduct me?" "Abduct?" The Gong Jia seemed to have heard a funny word. His thin lips curled into a helpless smile. My good nephew, where can I abduct you to? Mommy said that I must know how to protect myself. Other than mommy and daddy, everyone else can abduct me. After a pause, Yu looked at the Gong Jia warily. Even if it's my dear uncle, you must still be careful. Gong Jia, he felt that he was being despised. He looked down at little Munchkin and pretended to be serious. Sometimes, it's not a good thing to be so alert. Besides, who would be so stupid as to kidnap a terrorist leader? Dear uncle, please mind your words. Yu defended himself seriously, that's a description of you. As for me, I'm a sunny and naive good child. I don't engage in terrorist activities. Gong Jia lightly ridiculed, you're not doing it, you're just giving orders to a group of terrorists. Yu crossed her arms elegantly, her expression unruly. Gong Jia chuckled again as he scratched the boy's adorable nose bridge and teased, who would have thought that such a person is actually a 7-year-old lad. Yu, you're really good at hiding things. Let's cut the crap. Yu raised his hand and interrupted Gong Jia's teasing. He looked up at him and asked, Uncle, why are you looking for me? Can't I play with you for no reason? Yu said coldly, no, I'm very busy. Gong Jia was instantly rebuffed. What exactly was he busy with? If you have something to say, then get to the point. If there's nothing else, then send me home. I want to go home and accompany mommy. My good nephew, why don't you have dinner with me tonight? I refuse. Why? Gong Jia looked at him with a hurt expression. Yu smiled. I'm very expensive. Can you afford my appearance fee? Gong Jia was speechless again. Chapter 17-16. Yu was speechless. My mommy is getting married. What's there to be sad about? As he spoke, he cast a sideways glance at him suspiciously and asked disdainfully, Don't tell me you have a sister fetish. Gong Jia frowned. Although his Mandarin was good, he had been abroad for many years and could not understand some of the more obscure terms. For example, this sister fetish, what did it mean? Yu disdained him again in his heart and translated it into English. Gong Jia was stunned. Then, he thought about it seriously and replied, a little. Yu was even more disdainful now. In my heart, there are 2 women in my heart who are the most important in my life. One is your grandmother, and the other is your mommy. Since mommy is the person you love dearly, shouldn't you be happy for her when she finds happiness? Yu said matter-of-factly. Gong Jia was a little disappointed. Will she find happiness? You can't make the decision on this. Similarly, I can't make the decision either. But I think mommy has thought it through carefully before she makes a decision. So, I trust her decision. Yu suddenly sighed and patted Gong Jia's shoulder like an old man. He seemed to empathize with Gong Jia's disappointment. Actually, mommy and daddy are about to get engaged. My feelings are very complicated too. So, I can understand why you feel that way. Gong Jia frowned in confusion. Mixed feelings. Then, Gong Jia's lips twitched and he cast a disdainful glance at him. Don't tell me you have an Oedipus fetish. Yu frowned. Mommy is my baby. She is the most precious treasure in the world. In the back seat of the car, a sister fetish and a mommy's boy looked at each other and sighed. They pitifully licked each other's wounds. Yu opened his heart and complained quietly, Mommy and I have depended on each other since I was born. No matter how hard the days are, as long as I can be by mommy's side, I'm not afraid of anything. Gong Jia felt the same way. Ever since I was born, my sister and I depended on each other. No matter how hard the days are, as long as I can be by her side, I have no fear. Yu's eyes suddenly turned fierce. But I didn't expect a man to appear out of nowhere. Gong Jia also shared the same hatred. My sister was snatched away, Yu clenched his fists and said, "This man is obviously trying to steal my mommy. I see him as a love rival." Gong Jia said worriedly, "But he is the man that my sister loves deeply." Yu muttered sullenly, "I still have to call this love rival Daddy." Gong Jia shook his head. "But I don't recognize this brother-in-law." The two of them suddenly looked at each other and stared at each other. Suddenly, they sighed silently and spoke in unison. Then, they hugged each other and licked each other's wounds dejectedly. "I feel like I've lost half my soul when Mommy got married. I feel like I've fallen out of love too, but no matter what, as long as it's Mommy's choice, I'll..." Yu clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. "I'll give her my blessings." However, his eyes were like that of a wounded animal. Gong Jia looked at him. Yu, should I go to your mommy's engagement party?" "Uncle, forgive me for being blunt. Are you in the late stages of a sister fetish?" Yu asked quietly. Chapter 17:17. Yu paused for a moment and said, "Mommy would definitely want you to be her witness at such an important moment." Gong Jia narrowed his eyes and seemed to be deep in thought. That night, Yu accompanied Gong Jia to drown his sorrows in alcohol. Gong Jia evoked the sorrow that he had hidden deep in his heart. To be honest, he was happy that his mommy was about to get married, but he still felt a little reluctant to part with her. Initially, he had hidden it deep in his heart. However, when he saw Gong Jia licking his wounds pitifully, he was also affected by his emotions. Hence, the uncle and nephew put their arms around each other's shoulders and shared their disappointment. Of course, Yun Shishir did not know that Yu was having dinner with Gong Jia. Yu only said that he had something to do and would go home after dinner. Yun Shishir was still worried, so Yu used Li Hanlin as an excuse and successfully got away with it. As for the other mommy's boy, Xiao Yichen. When he found out that his mommy and daddy were getting engaged, he was so happy that he wanted to sit on a helium balloon and fly into the sky. He was so happy. How could he not be happy? From now on, their family of 4 would be happy and harmonious. This was a happiness that he could not even dream of. For dinner, Yun Shishir made dumplings for dinner. She was in a rare mood and thought that since she was free, she would make some dumplings to eat. She had not eaten dumplings for a long time. Speaking of dumplings, Yu's dumplings were the best. She missed them a little. However, now that Yu was not around, she decided to make them herself. In the end, she had not made dumplings for a long time. Moreover, without Yu's guidance, the dumplings she made were strange and refined. Refined meant that ordinary people would not make dumplings like this. Xiao Yichen could not stand it anymore and muttered quietly, "Yu's dumplings are not like this." An arrow pierced through the heart. Yun Shishir clutched her chest and supported her body. It was obvious that she had suffered a great blow. Xiao Yichen fiddled with the dumplings, which were either broken or strangely shaped. She muttered to herself, "Is this thing edible?" Yun Shishir fell to the ground and could not get up. Xiao Yichen said disdainfully, "Sigh, we can't do without Yu at home. Mommy, you should eat noodles instead. Daddy should be back very late today." With that, he sat at the table with a bitter look on his face and complained in his heart, "Why didn't Yu bring me out for a good meal?" She left him alone at home. He felt stifled. Yun Shishir comforted him. "Xiao Yichen, I'm sorry. Mommy isn't in a good state today. Mommy's dumplings are actually pretty good. It's just that I haven't cooked for a long time. Mommy, you can't rely on Yu too much. I feel like Yu has spoiled you too much." Sigh. My heart aches for Yu. Yun Shishir wanted to vomit blood. It seemed like it did. I was wrong. Yun Shishir wanted to cry but had no tears. I'll definitely learn how to do housework properly. Mommy, I was just joking. Don't take it seriously. Xiao Yichen saw that she was disappointed and said nervously, "Mommy, you don't have to do housework. You just have to be as beautiful as a flower." Yun Shishir looked at the mess on the table and finally decided to go out and eat ready-made food. Late at night, when Mu Yaja came back, the two little munchkins were already asleep. Yun Shishir sat on the sofa and quietly read her script while waiting for him to come home. Seeing that he was back, Yun Shishir immediately went up to him and hugged him. "Why are you back so late?" Chapter 17-18. "You've been waiting for me so late again. Aren't you tired?" Mu Yaja lowered his head and stroked her silky hair gently. His lips curled into a doting smile. "If you're tired, go to bed first." "No, I'll wait for you." Yun Shishir looked up, tiptoed, and pecked him on the lips. She smiled. "Anyway, I'm resting tomorrow." "So, you're making enemies?" Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows slightly, but his tone was indescribably doting. Yun Shishir smiled and suddenly thought of something. She asked, "Have you had dinner?" "No." Mu Yaja took off his coat and hung it at the entrance. He said indifferently, "I had a meeting until very late today, so I didn't have time for dinner." "Then I'll make noodles for you," Yun Shishir said considerately. After saying that, she ran to the kitchen. Mu Yaja stopped her. "No." "Huh?" Yun Shishir turned around and looked at him in confusion. "What's wrong? Aren't you hungry?" "I'm tired of noodles," Mu Yaja said helplessly. Yun Shishir was deeply hurt. She seemed to be very passionate about making noodles. It was simple, fast, and ready. Besides, her most perfect cooking skills could only be reflected in making noodles. Indeed, the noodles she made were remarkable. However, no matter how good the taste was, it was inevitable that one would get sick of it after eating too much. Mu Yaja was especially picky when it came to food. "Then, what should we do?" Yun Shishir said a little dejectedly, "Why don't we go out for supper? It's cold outside. Be good and stay at home." After Mu Yaja said that, he suddenly stood up. He lowered his head, unbuttoned his sleeves and elegantly rolled them up to his arms. Yun Shishir was confused by his actions. "You. What are you doing?" A certain man said concisely, solving the problem of food and clothing. "So, you're going to cook yourself?" Yun Shishir was a little skeptical. "Are you sure your cooking skills are okay?" Mu Yaja smiled and walked into the kitchen. He took some ingredients from the fridge and then took out a knife and chopping board. Yun Shishir followed into the kitchen with a look of suspicion. She still felt like she was in a fantasy. It wasn't that she had never seen a man cook. However, in her impression, Mu Yaja seemed to have no connection with the word cooking. Could it be that he knew how to cook? Why hadn't she seen him show it before? "You used to cook a lot." "No, occasionally." Mu Yaja cut the onions into rings and washed the ingredients. In the past, he might not be willing to cook by himself, but today, he was in a good mood. After a night of meetings, the board of directors finally passed a case with a unanimous vote. This proposal that had been in a deadlock for several days finally came to fruition, so even if he returned late, he was obviously in a good mood. Since he was in a good mood, it was rare for him to want to cook himself. Yun Shishir stood at the side and watched curiously. Although she was still skeptical of this man's cooking skills, she had to admit that his cutting skills were very professional. Could it be that he had practiced before? Or was he just deliberately mystifying things? Yun Shishir stood at the side and watched silently. Why did she feel that a well-dressed man in a clean, snow-white shirt and slim-fit trousers standing in the kitchen with a knife in his hand looked out of place no matter how she looked at him? She muttered, "Do you really know how to cook?" Mu Yaja said, "A little." Chapter 17-19. When he was studying abroad, he had a meal class. During the class, he would be taught some simple Western dishes. He had only learned how to make cheese-baked rice. Of course, as a rich young master of the Mu family, he rarely cooked for himself. The only time he cooked was when he was in a good mood and wanted to show off his skills in front of Xiao Yichen. In the end, he made a mistake and the oven exploded. The reason was, he had accidentally dropped his phone in the oven and the consequences were obvious. Therefore, Xiao Yichen had a deep impression of that incident. Initially, he was looking forward to his daddy showing off his culinary skills and tasting delicious food. In the end, he heard a loud bang. The kitchen had exploded. Xiao Yichen was shocked when he thought that the villa had been attacked by terrorists, just like the news he had seen on TV. In the end, he realized that Mu Yaja had blown up the kitchen. Therefore, Xiao Yichen hated Mu Yaja's culinary skills for the rest of his life. He felt that he had been wronged. The explosion in the kitchen was an accident. It was caused by a small oversight on his part. Since then, he had never entered the kitchen again. He was treated as a terrorist and was stopped outside the kitchen. Today, he was in a good mood and decided to try the cheese-baked rice again. There were ready-made ingredients at home. Although he was very unfamiliar with his culinary skills, he was very meticulous in his cutting. Every step was done according to the process in his memory. He was meticulous and patient. Yun Shishir watched quietly from the side. From time to time, she would raise her head to look at his serious and charming side profile. She was very moved. No wonder people said that men who cooked were the most elegant. At that moment, Mu Yaja was dressed in a shirt and was well-groomed. However, he held the ingredients in one hand and the knife in the other. He lowered his head and carefully cut the onion rings along the cross-section. His long and thick eyelashes drooped down and covered his eyes, leaving a row of deep shadows. His thin lips were tightly pursed. He seemed to be very careful, afraid that he would miss anything. Yun Shishir suddenly thought of something. She took an apron from the side and put it on for him. Mu Yaja lowered his head to take a look and frowned slightly. She actually made him wear such a cute apron. The apron was printed with a pink cartoon picture of a cute rabbit with long ears. It looked weird on him no matter how he looked at it. It didn't match his handsome appearance at all. Yun Shishir sized him up and covered her mouth as she snickered. You did it on purpose. Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows. He was clearly unhappy with her teasing. However, this displeasure disappeared in the blink of an eye along with the doting smile in his eyes. It's fun. You look really cute in this dress. Mu Yaja didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In all his life, no one had ever used the word cute to describe him. Don't mess around. Yun Shishir pouted and replied with an oh. Sure enough, she obediently sat at the side and did not say anything more. Still, she could not help but snicker when she sneaked a peek at the apron he was wearing. Mu Yaja couldn't do anything about it and let her go. However, he didn't take off the apron on him. He put the rice into the oven and set the mode. Next, he had to wait for a while. Yun Shishir suddenly hugged him from behind. Chapter 17:20. I feel like I'm in a dream. Yun Shishir sighed. Mu Yaja turned around and cupped her rosy cheeks. He asked playfully, why do you say that? Do you know how mesmerizing you are when you're cooking? She buried her little face in his chest, raised her eyes, and blinked at him. On her delicate face, there was a sweet smile. The generous praise fell into his ears, and he naturally enjoyed it to the extreme. Mesmerizing. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile. Yun Shishir suddenly thought of something and took his hand to the bedroom. On the bed was the suit she had personally picked out for him at the department store. She held the handbag in front of him and instructed, try it on. I bought it for you. See how it looks on you. She paused for a moment and said proudly, "I just got paid. Half of it was spent on this suit." Muyaja knew very well that the salary she was talking about was the remuneration from the movie and the endorsement fees from the advertisements. He couldn't help but laugh. This silly woman. Armani's custom-made suits were usually very expensive. Most of his suits were custom-made and were more particular than the suits in the department store. Usually, the suits in the department store wouldn't catch his eye. However, since she had personally picked it out, it was a different story. As long as she picked it out, he would like it. The suit was a complete set with a shirt, trousers, and tie. Muyaja changed into it. Surprisingly, her taste was quite accurate. The suit fit well and was neither too big nor too small. He bent down and elegantly tidied up his sleeves. Yun Shishir immediately went up to him and carefully tidied him up. From the tie to the sleeves to the diamond brooch on his chest, she was very careful and very serious. "It's done." Yun Shishir looked up and took a few steps back. She looked at him with her hands behind her back. The more she looked, the more she liked him. She couldn't help but praise herself. "My taste is really good. You look really good in this." Muyaja raised his eyebrows and walked up to the mirror. He looked at himself in satisfaction. Speaking of which, this suit was probably the first piece of clothing she had ever bought for him. When he wore it, it fit him perfectly and made him look extremely elegant. She was very meticulous when it came to choosing clothes. From the fabric, to the style, to the details, she paid a lot of attention to everything. Even someone as picky as Muyaja was very satisfied with this suit. However, in reality, he was a standard clothes hanger. No matter what suit he wore, it would fit him perfectly. Clothes make the man, but when it came to him, it didn't seem appropriate at all. No matter what kind of clothes he wore, he would always look elegant and noble when he wore them. Yun Shishir looked at it. The more she looked, the more she liked it. She smiled and asked, "How is it? What do you think of my taste?" "Not bad." Muyaja commented sincerely. "When we get engaged, you'll wear this, okay?" Yun Shishir asked tentatively, but her heart was beating like a drum. She didn't know if Muyaja would agree to it or not. She had spent 2 million yuan on this suit, but in reality, to him, most of the clothes he wore were very expensive. This price was not considered high-end. She didn't know if he would be interested in the clothes she had bought with his picky taste. Rummaging through his wardrobe, even the lowest quality suit was worth a few million yuan. Chapter 1721. From the bottom of her heart, she really hoped that he would wear the suit that she had personally picked out for their engagement ceremony and appear on such an important occasion. But, she was afraid that he would feel that this suit was beneath his standards. She did not expect Muyaja to agree so readily. "Okay." He agreed so quickly that she found it hard to believe. "You agreed so quickly." Yun Shishir was a little overwhelmed by the favor and looked a little surprised. "Why?" Muyaja adjusted his tie in front of the mirror and smiled deeply. "Wearing the suit that Madame personally picked out for the engagement ceremony is more meaningful, isn't it? Do you like it?" Yun Shishir wanted to test his feelings. After all, she hoped that he would sincerely like her taste. "I like it." "Really?" "Yes. I like it very much." Yun Shishir's eyes lit up instantly. She looked him up and down and was as happy as a little bird. He nodded and said that he liked it. To her, it was the greatest affirmation. As long as you like it. What's important is that it suits your feelings. I'm very satisfied. She held his shoulders again, not allowing him to object. Looking left and right, she was satisfied no matter how she looked at him. So good looking. My hubby is really a clothes hanger. No matter what clothes he wears, he looks good. Muyaja had the standard golden body ratio, which made her extremely jealous. Suddenly, the two of them smelled a burnt smell from the kitchen. Yun Shusher's heart skipped a beat and she was shocked. Oh no. Oh no. Muyaja's expression changed as well. Yun Shusher anxiously rushed to the kitchen, opened the oven, put on a pair of gloves, and took out the cheese rice. The burnt smell became more obvious and pungent. She frowned, only to see that the cheese rice was burnt. Clearly, the baking had failed. She was instantly annoyed. Muyaja walked into the kitchen and also smelled the burnt smell. He frowned suddenly. It's burnt. Yun Shusher held her forehead in frustration and nodded. Muyaja glanced at it. The baking time had exceeded and the rice was already burnt. The two of them looked at each other. A question suddenly popped up in Yun Shusher's mind. Who did you inherit her cooking genes from? A good cheesy rice was actually burnt by them. It looked like the two of them did not have the talent to cook. You must have gone through a genetic mutation. What should we do? Muyaja asked. Yun Shusher was confused. Why was she blaming her? It was obvious that he wasn't attentive and forgot the time. If you weren't in such a hurry to get me to try on the suit, things wouldn't have turned out this way. When he said that, Yun Shusher realized her sin. She immediately lowered her head guiltily, like a child who had made a mistake. She stood there helplessly, obviously feeling very guilty. I didn't do it on purpose. She was so focused on the suit, admiring it with satisfaction that she forgot that there was still something roasting in the oven in the kitchen. Muyaja couldn't help but blame her. Little rascal, it's all your fault. Tell me, you ruined my supper. How are you going to make it up to me? Yun Shusher felt even more guilty. She couldn't help feeling guilty when she thought about how he had been in meetings for so long and how his supper was ruined because of her. Chapter 1722. Muyaja chuckled inwardly at her guilty expression. He inched closer to her, grabbed her chin, and whispered, What should I do? Have you thought of how to make it up to me? His warm breath brushed against her cheeks without any restraint, and her little face was so hot that it was as if blood was about to drip from it. There seemed to be an indescribable aura of a tiger eyeing its prey from his body. He was like a lion that had locked onto its prey, forcing her into a corner and controlling this narrow space, causing her to feel even more inexplicably flustered. Yun Shusher carefully looked up and sized up his expression. She pursed her lips but didn't dare to look into his eyes. How do you want me to make it up to you? Tell me. He was determined to let her do as she saw fit. Yun Shusher thought for a moment and gave him a fawning smile. How about I make noodles for you to eat? There were still some ingredients in the kitchen, so making a bowl of noodles should be a piece of cake. Muyaja, on the other hand, had obviously gotten the wrong idea. Sizing her up with a meaningful look, he happily smiled. Okay. Yun Shusher suddenly saw a flash of meaning in his eyes and knew that this evil man must have thought in the wrong direction. Hey! It's not what you think. She hurriedly explained, I'll cook noodles for you. Hey, you're not allowed to think in the wrong direction. Muyaja didn't allow her to explain. He pushed her and smiled playfully. You're the one who deliberately led me to think in that direction. Shameless. Muyaja's domineering style was vividly displayed at this moment. You must love how shameless I am. Yun Shusher was so angry that her cheeks were pink. She stomped her feet and pushed him. Stop fooling around. I'll go cook noodles for you. With that, she pushed him away and walked towards the fridge. Muyaja tugged her arm and pulled her into his embrace. In the moment she struggled, he bent down and kissed her delicate lips. I don't want to eat noodles. I want to eat you. He pressed his lips against hers and breathed out a sentence. What followed was an endless kiss. Soft and charming, he was extremely infatuated with her sweet scent. He kissed her deeply and couldn't bear to let go of her for a long time. The interaction between their lips and teeth outlined the primitive impulse hidden deep in their hearts. Yun Shishir tried her best to suppress the rising desire in her heart. After struggling for a while, under his continuous attacks, she hurriedly retracted her drifting thoughts. "Don't, okay." He easily interrupted her and corrected her. Yun Shishir, on the other hand, did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Stop fooling around. You didn't eat dinner." "It's not important," interrupted the man, not allowing her to object. "What if the stomach disease acts up again? It's not important." "Muyaja, if your stomach acts up, it'll be very uncomfortable. It's not important." Muyaja held her face intimately and kissed her lips again and again. He looked at her affectionately. "The most important thing now is you." With that, he carried her bridal style into the bedroom and closed the door. A minute later, Yu tiptoed out of the room and glanced disdainfully at the master bedroom, muttering inwardly, "Dirty, dirty, 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 dirty. Shame on you. Daddy is getting dirtier." He couldn't listen to it anymore. Chapter 17:23. He woke up in the middle of the night and wanted to go to the bathroom. Just as he opened the door, he saw the two entwined figures in the kitchen, so he tactfully closed the door. It was only when Muyaja carried Yun Shishir into the bedroom that he came out and went to the kitchen. Looking at the mess in the kitchen, he sighed and quietly cleaned it up. Seriously. She was already a grown-up, yet she was still so troublesome. She made a mess in the kitchen and he had to clean up the mess. He really could not do anything about them. Despite his disdain, Yu still cleaned up the kitchen. In the end, he resisted the urge to eavesdrop. He came out of the bathroom, went to the bedroom, and went to bed. However, on this night, a certain woman was tormented miserably. A certain energetic man was not willing to stop until the wee hours of the morning. She was so tormented that her toes were trembling when she got out of bed. In the end, she was still shamefully dependent on him. He carried her to the bathroom and cleaned her up. She still had to film a scene tomorrow, so she begged him not to leave too many marks on her body. Although the man restrained himself a little, he still left some ambiguous kiss marks on her body. Yun Shishir was extremely vexed. She only felt that tomorrow, she would have to sneak into the room with the props and costumes, just like before. Ever since that day when Muyaja brought Yu back to the Mu family and officially announced his identity, the Mu family was in an uproar. There was a lot of discussion about Muyaja's actions, especially after he announced that Yun Tianyu would be the future successor of the Mu group and that he would focus on grooming him. This caused a lot of panic and uproar among the Mus. The bloodshed hidden in the dark was already ready to make a move. Muyaja was very strict about protecting Yu. Even after announcing his identity, he tried his best to prevent him from being exposed in front of the media. Hence, he did not hold a press conference to protect him. Still, this matter quickly spread to the Song family. Song Enya was even more incredulous when she learned about it. What? Brother Mu actually wants to make that illegitimate child the heir. Then, wouldn't that allow Yun Shishir's scheme to succeed? In Song Enya's eyes, Yun Shishir was an extremely scheming woman. On the surface, she looked innocent and harmless, like a pure and innocent little bunny. However, it was often people like her who were the most unfathomable. She had used the opportunity of surrogacy to give birth to 2 children. She had secretly kept one of the children by her side and nurtured it. Now that the child had been recognized by the Mu family and had been made the heir, it was only a matter of time before she was recognized by the Mu family. Wasn't this exactly what Yun Shishir wanted? Wasn't all of her painstaking planning for this day? Just like the royal family in ancient times, if her son was made the heir, then wouldn't she be able to fly up the tree and become a phoenix? Oh my God! What a flawless plan! This Yun Shusher's methods were really impressive. Half of her ambition had already been realized. She and Brother Mu had registered their marriage, and she was only a step away from entering the Mu family. Song Anya was even more anxious and could no longer hold herself back. Chapter 1724. Minyu, on the other hand, stood at the side in trepidation. Song Anya had barged into the CEO's office without any explanation. Due to her status, he could not be too harsh on her, but he did not expect that she would refuse to leave after staying in the office for so long. Song Anya, who was sitting on the sofa in a daze, stood up excitedly the moment she saw Mu Yaja return and called out, "Brother Mu." Perhaps due to her hesitation and agitation, she broke her voice the moment she opened her mouth, which was rather strange. Her lack of restraint caused Min Yu to silently criticize her. She's the mayor's daughter, after all. How can she barge into the CEO's office with such fanfare and refuse to leave? She's too immoral. What would it look like if word got out? The main thing was that she had implicated the CEO and would inevitably be criticized. When Mu Yaja saw her, he frowned and walked straight to his desk. After putting down the documents, he sat down and asked coldly, "Why are you looking for me?" I called you, why didn't you pick up?" "I was in a meeting." "Have you been in a meeting all day?" she asked with some dissatisfaction. Her tone was like that of a wife who was questioning her husband for not picking up her calls. It would be normal for her to ask such a question to Yun Shusher, but it was inappropriate for her to ask such a question given her status. Song Anya, however, did not notice it at all. Mu Yaja looked up at her with some dissatisfaction but did not say anything in the end. "Yes. Are you that busy? It's the end of the year, and the cases are piling up." It was rare for him to give such an explanation, but the implication was that he was very busy now and should not be disturbed. Alas, the Missy's EQ was notoriously low. Of course, she did not pick up on the warning in his words and continued to stay. "Even if you're busy, you should take care of your health. I heard from your executive assistant that you haven't eaten lunch again today. Are you hungry now, Brother Mu?" As she spoke, she walked to his desk and sat down on the chair beside him like a virtuous wife visiting her husband at work. "If you're hungry, I'll order takeout for you. How about that?" "No need." "Then, are you thirsty? Shall I make you a cup of tea?" "No need." She pouted in dissatisfaction. "What exactly do you need, then?" Mu Yaja looked up at her and said meaningfully, "I need silence." Song Anya felt awkward the moment she heard that. After a long silence, she said with some grievance, "I don't want to disturb you at work, but there's something I need to hear from you personally." "Speak." Mu Yaja's words were concise and comprehensive. She pondered for a moment before carefully probing, "Brother Mu, are you married to Yun Shusher?" As soon as she finished speaking, she saw Mu Yaja's expression darken. A cold glint flashed across his eyes. He raised his head and his cold gaze fell upon her, but there was a hint of displeasure in it. "Song Anya, did you investigate me?" He had never called her by her name, but this was the first and only time he had done so. Calling her by her full name was a sign of reproach. Be it his expression or his tone, it showed that he was extremely displeased at this moment. Chapter 1725. Seeing that the situation had reached a stalemate, Minyu felt awkward. He was also someone who knew how to judge the situation. Sensing that something was amiss, he quietly retreated from the office and closed the door behind him. At this moment, only Mu Yaja and Song Anya were left in the spacious office. Without the presence of an outsider like him, Song Anya completely put down her airs as a missy and begged for his forgiveness. "Brother Mu. I'm sorry. Don't misunderstand, I didn't investigate you on purpose." Song Anya explained helplessly in an attempt to appease his anger. However, Muyaja's face grew colder as he looked at her. His cold gaze made her feel somewhat unfamiliar. Muyaja's thin lips parted slightly, but his tone was extremely cold. If you didn't investigate on purpose, then you investigated me. Song Enya found it hard to defend herself. She bit her lower lip, feeling conflicted. Muyaja coldly said, Song Enya, I'm warning you, whether I'm married or not, and who I marry, is none of your business. If you have the energy, spend it on other things. Brother Mu, how can you say that? Song Enya was angry and aggrieved. Her eyes were red and moist as she glared at him with tears in her eyes. I'm just concerned about you. Muyaja reprimanded in a deep voice, I don't need this kind of concern. Song Enya was stunned as if she had been struck by lightning. Muyaja's handsome eyes were cold as he stared at her. Just one look from him was enough to pierce her skin. His thin lips moved slightly, but his voice was as cold as winter snow. It could freeze one's blood in an instant. Have I been too doting on you all this time? Is that why you're so arrogant that you don't care about propriety when you do things? I might be confused because of my concern, but Brother Mu, what bad intentions can I have toward you? You didn't even tell me that you're married. You didn't even give me a chance to give you my blessings. Will you give me your blessings if I tell you? Muyaja did not believe her words. Those were just excuses. How could he not know what she was thinking about him? Ever since that incident, he had distanced himself from her. Whether it was her calls or texts, he ignored them and pretended not to see them. Song Enya had come to the Mu group several times to look for him, but she had either failed to find him or was sent away by his assistant. He deliberately distanced himself from her because, first, even though he had always doted on Song Enya and treated her as his biological sister, no matter how close their relationship was, he would not let anyone who hurt Yunshishir get off lightly. Secondly, Yunshishir did not like Song Enya. Even if she did not say it, she did not mind. However, in consideration of his feelings, Muyaja was much colder to her. Even when Song Enya took the initiative to contact him, he treated her indifferently. Furthermore, after that incident, he was very disappointed in Song Enya and had a lot of dissatisfaction toward her. Still, he did not take any measures for the sake of the Song family's reputation, but that did not mean that he could let bygones be bygones. She carefully observed his expression and probed, Brother Mu, are you really going to marry that woman? Chapter 17:26. She stared at him blankly, feeling that the Muyaja in front of her was a stranger no matter how she looked at him. In the past, he would not be so strict with her and even say such harsh words to her. She furrowed her brows sadly, her red lips trembling as if she was deliberately suppressing the grievances in her heart. Nevertheless, tears still overflowed from her eyes and flowed down her cheeks uncontrollably. She complained sadly, Brother Mu, you've changed. Muyaja's eyes were cold as she broke down and cried, in the past, you've never been so fierce to me, nor have you been so cold and indifferent to me. You clearly doted on me so much, but now, because of that Yunshishir, you're not only fierce to me, but you're also distancing yourself from me and treating me coldly. How can you do this? She raised her head abruptly and looked at him with teary eyes. Brother Mu, it's all because of her. If that woman hadn't appeared and snatched away the love that should have belonged to me, you wouldn't have treated me like this. You clearly doted on me the most. But now, it was as if he had been bewitched by that Yunshishir. He ignored her and even treated her so coldly. It was so unfair. Muyaja frowned slightly. Yunshishir snatched away the love that should have belonged to her. Muyaja sneered at her words. Who did she think she was? Yunshishir was his legal wife, so it was his duty to dote on her, love her, dote on her, and be considerate of her. It was also his responsibility as a man. Moreover, he was happy to dote on his wife, and protect her in the palm of his hand. As for her, to him, she was nothing. What did she mean by Yun Shusher snatching away the love that should have belonged to her? It was ridiculous. He did not know why she would have such a ridiculous idea. Song Anya, it's time for you to stop being so self-righteous. Muyaja paused for a moment before continuing. Also, don't come to the office to look for me in the future. If my wife finds out, she'll be unhappy. The unspoken doting was reflected in his tone and expression. At the mention of Yun Shusher, he addressed her intimately as Madam. The adoration in his eyes was unprecedented, making Song Anya extremely jealous. Madam. He actually addressed Yun Shusher in such an intimate manner. How could he? Song Anya was so jealous that her teeth were about to shatter from gritting them, but in front of Muyaja, she had no choice but to force a smile. Brother Mu. Some women aren't like what you see. Maybe, on the surface, she looks innocent and harmless, but in reality, she's very shrewd. Do you think she truly loves you? After a pause, she continued as if she did not notice Muyaja's darkening face. You're the head of the Mu family and the CEO of Dishing Financial Group. Do you really think she's with you just because she wants to be with you? I've long suspected that her motives were impure. Now, there's news from the Muse that you've announced that Yun Tianyu will be the successor of the Mu Group. Isn't this exactly what she wants? She's been scheming for 7 years, isn't it all for this moment? Could it be that you really can't tell that all of this is because of her ambition? Brother Mu, wake up. Don't be blinded by this woman. Shut up. Chapter 1727. Brother Mu, how dare you ask me to get lost? Song Anya asked in a daze, her eyes widening in disbelief. She did not expect that Muyaja would say such cruel words to her for Yun Shusher. Shut up and get lost. He actually asked her to get lost. Why? She was reminding him out of goodwill. After all, in a circle like the entertainment industry, materialistic and extravagant, women from the entertainment industry were more or less shrewd. What about him? He did not listen to her advice and instead asked her to get lost. Song Anya was aggrieved and heartbroken. Even though she bit her lower lip hard, bean-sized tears still flowed uncontrollably from her eyes. Muyaja, on the other hand, was disgusted by her pitiful appearance. In the past, he might have felt some pity for her, but now, he felt extremely disgusted by her. Get lost, I don't want to see you. Brother Mu. Song Anya was aggrieved and embarrassed. She stared at him with tears in her eyes, her face full of uneasiness. Only women understand women the best. The Yun Shusher you see, the innocent and beautiful woman you see, is just an illusion. She's an actress, and her acting skills are so good. Everything she shows in front of you is just an act. How can there be such a naive woman? She's just putting on an act. She's obviously using someone else's womb to give birth and hiding the child by her side in a dignified manner. She's scheming so that she can rely on her child's status in the future. Crash. Muyaja finally lost his patience. He grabbed the teacup beside him, raised his wrist, and splashed the tea in the cup on Song Enya's face. Minyu had brewed and cooled the tea for him before he had a meeting. The tea was still warm. It splashed all over her exquisitely made-up face. The steeped tea leaves stained her face, eyelashes, and lips, making her look extremely pathetic. Song Anya was stunned for a moment. The moment she was splashed with tea, her mind went blank and stopped working. However, when she came back to her senses, a huge sense of grievance washed over her, as if it was the end of the world. Great grief welled up in her heart. The corners of her lips twitched a few times, and her chest heaved up and down with sorrow. Tears gushed out uncontrollably. She was hurt by the person she loved the most and was even mercilessly humiliated. How exactly did she feel? At that moment, Song Enya even had the urge to die. In her heart, Mu was a godlike existence, whom she had always respected and admired, but reality gave her a hard slap. Brother Mu. How dare he humiliate her like this? However, the Missy's first reaction was not to feel humiliated but to feel uneasy and fearful. Did he hate her? No, she couldn't hate him. Song Enya looked at him with teary eyes, seemingly wanting to say something. Loving someone who did not love him, loves him. However, the saddest thing was that the man she loved would never turn around to look at her even though she was already in the dust. She did not beg him to like her, though. She was willing to silently protect him for the rest of her life, even if she did not have a status. She would rather Mu Yaja's fiancé be Mu Wanru. At least, Mu Wanru and him would be husband and wife without any status. At least, he did not have any woman in his heart. Chapter 1728. To put it bluntly, no one else could have what she could not have either. Song Enya bit her lower lip tightly as the tea on her face slid down the wrinkles on her skin. More than half of her meticulously applied makeup was ruined by the impact of the tea. She lowered her head, her face ashen and filled with despair and grievance. She did not want him to see her in such a sorry state, so she said with a dead heart, Brother Mu. It seems that I've disturbed you. I'll leave first. I'll look for you next time. With that, she stood up, pushed the chair away, and turned to retreat toward the door. Mu Yaja, however, said coldly behind her, My wife doesn't like you, so don't come looking for me in the future. Song Enya's heart trembled when she heard that. She turned around abruptly and stared at him for a long time. Her face was pale, but the corners of her lips curled up as tears gushed out uncontrollably. Brother Mu, don't be angry with me. Okay. I'll be obedient, okay? I'll listen to you obediently. I won't come looking for you until you've cooled down, okay? I beg you, don't abandon me. If he really hated her from now on, it would be like the end of the world for her. Song Enya cried helplessly like a child. If it were in the past, Mu Yaja's heart would probably soften because of this. However, looking at her now, more than half of her exquisite makeup was ruined, revealing her original bare face. On the surface, she looked innocent and harmless. When he thought of the things she had done behind his back and hurt Yunshusher, he could no longer feel heartache for her. Perhaps, when there was someone important enough in his heart, others would seem unimportant. He did not care what this woman, whom he had doted on since they were young, would think of him because of his outburst this time. He did not value her. As long as his woman did not like someone, he would not come into contact with them. Mu Yaja ignored her. He lowered his head coldly and made a call to Minyu to clean up the mess in his office. Minyu had just pushed open the office door when he was startled to see Song Enya's ghastly pale face. He patted his chest, obviously frightened, but he couldn't show it on his face. To be honest, Song Enya's current state was rather pitiful. Her originally pretty face and exquisite makeup had been splashed all over with tea leaves on her face, making her look extremely miserable. What was more disgusting was, it turned out that Song Enya's beautiful looks were all done with makeup. Half of her face had taken off her makeup, and she no longer had any spiritual energy. She looked plain and ordinary. It seemed that the so-called beauties were just packaged at a later stage. The so-called socialites of the capital, the daughter of the mayor, were just ordinary people. Clean up the table. Mu Yaja ordered. After that, he stood up, picked up the document, and walked to the door. Minyu stood to the side obediently and made way for him. When they reached the door, the Missy's lips trembled slightly as she tentatively reached out to grab his sleeve. Mu Yaja, however, seemed to have eyes on the back of his head as he evaded her ruthlessly with an expressionless face. Song Enya reached out to grab air and watched helplessly as he slammed the door and left. The loud bang seemed to show how displeased he was. The sound of the door closing was so loud that even Minyu, who was standing at the side, was shocked and dumbfounded. Chapter 1729. Once he was done tidying up the office, he would have to inform his subordinates to act according to their mood. He hurriedly tidied up the table. The CEO's office was not a place where just anyone could enter. It was equipped with a dedicated cleaner and assistant. Other than some important directors of the consortium, Minyu was probably the only one who could enter and leave freely. He was also the one who delivered the important documents. After Mu Yaja slammed the door and left, Song Enya seemed to have lost all her strength. She slowly fell to the floor and sobbed sadly. After he was done tidying up the table, he turned around and saw her sitting helplessly on the floor, covering her face and crying sadly. He walked over and asked kindly, "Miss Song, should I get someone to send you back?" He kindly reminded her, "Miss Song." Song Enya, who was already in a state of despair, was annoyed by his repeated disturbances. She raised her head and yelled, "Don't bother about me." Minyu frowned, angered by her rudeness. However, given his status, he could not be calculative with her. He smiled elegantly and calmly said, "If you feel sad, you can find a corner and cry. At least think of a way to clean yourself up first. You look quite ugly like this. Besides, you're disturbing me by sitting here." "What?" "The boss has a serious case of misophobia. You're dirty, so don't dirty the office. He'll be angry again when you come back," he said expressionlessly. "You." Song Enya could hear the sarcasm in his words. She raised a brow and glared at him angrily. He smiled slightly but was not afraid of the threat in her eyes. He said coldly, "Please leave, okay? Okay. Okay. You're all chasing me away, right? I'll leave." With that, she got up and made to leave. Minyu called out from behind, "Please wait a moment." She turned around. "What do you want now? Don't forget your bag." He passed her Gucci handbag to her. She was flustered and exasperated. Snatching the bag from his hand, she turned around and slammed the door behind her. After she returned home, she locked herself in her room and did not come out. When Song Yunshi came back, she knocked on the door, but no one answered. He didn't know what had happened today, but he vaguely sensed that his sister was in a bad mood. It was more or less related to Uncle Mu. However, he was exhausted from dealing with this matter. This younger sister of his was all right in other aspects, but her temper was especially stubborn. Once she set her mind on something, she would insist until her head bled and she would not change her mind. It was also that night that she decided to take a risk. Since she could not get Brother Mu, she would not hesitate to resort to some despicable means. Of course, this was all in the future. News of Mu Yaja's marriage soon reached Mu Linfeng's ears. Mu Linfeng had a wide network of connections in both the underworld and the underworld. Hence, his nephew's marriage could not be kept a secret from him for long. When he found out that Mu Yaja had registered his marriage with Yun Shishir without telling the rest of the Muse, he was furious. What did it mean to register their marriage? It meant that they were officially legally married. Chapter 1730. He went straight to the point without beating around the bush. "I heard that you've registered your marriage with that woman. You should have at least informed me of such a huge matter." He had long expected his uncle to find out about this matter so quickly. He questioned him furiously the moment he called. Mu Yaja laughed instead. "Second uncle, why should I inform you in advance? Who I marry is my private matter. I don't have to report to you about what I should do I? Besides, we're registering our marriage, not holding a wedding. There's no need to make such a big fuss about it." "So, you're saying that you've registered your marriage with that woman? You should have reported it to me." Mu Linfeng was infuriated by his nonchalant tone and felt that he had been greatly neglected. Do you think you'll agree to this if I report it to you? You're against it anyway, so there's no need for me to inform you. Mu Yaja paused for a moment before continuing in a low voice. Also, second uncle, that woman you're talking about is now my legitimate wife. She has her own name. As a form of respect, I think it's inappropriate for you to call her that. Mu Linfeng was so angry that he laughed when he heard that. He sneered. She's just a despicable woman who popped out of nowhere. She's not worthy of my respect. Mu Yaja's lips curled into a smile. He had already expected his uncle's attitude, so he wasn't angry at all. Yun Shishir was his wife. He didn't care what others thought of her. She was the woman he had set his mind on, and that was enough. Besides, his marriage was his business. Who had the right to tell him what to do? Yaja, you've gone overboard on this point. Is it appropriate for you to register your marriage without saying a word? What will people say about you if this spreads to the Mu family? Mu Linfeng paused for a moment before ordering, take advantage of the fact that this matter hasn't spread to the public yet to dissolve your marriage. When the time comes, I'll use some means to suppress this matter and pretend that it never happened. Do you understand? Annul the marriage. Mu Yaja suddenly laughed, but his voice was cold. Second uncle, when have I ever gone back on my words? Since I'm married to her, there's no such thing as divorce. Don't mention this matter again. I've made up my mind. Mu Yaja sat down on the sofa with his legs crossed elegantly. He held his cell phone in his hand, but he appeared nonchalant and relaxed. On the other end, Mu Linfeng was infuriated by his resolute attitude. He did not utter a word, but his heavy breathing could be heard through the phone. It was obvious that he was eyeing him covetously. It seemed that he was very angry. Are you really determined to marry her? Mu Linfeng's question was met with affirmation from Mu Yaja. I've already decided. I hope second uncle can fulfill my wish. In your dreams. Mu Linfeng retorted angrily, I'll fulfill your wish. If you want to get married, sure. However, it couldn't be that woman of unknown origin. You've been getting more and more out of hand recently. First, you suddenly brought back a child and announced his identity as the successor. Then, you registered your marriage with this woman. Are you out to ruin the Mu family's reputation? Ruin the family's reputation. Chapter 1731. Second uncle, didn't you ask me to get married as soon as possible? Now that I've fulfilled your wish, I'm marrying a wife, having a child, and holding a grand wedding in the future. Yu is very outstanding and smart. With some training, she'll definitely become a great talent in the future. She'll surpass her master and be a better successor than me when she grows up. As for Yun Shishir, she's gentle and skilled. I owe her a lot and don't want to mistreat her anymore. Ha! You don't want to mistreat her, so you're sacrificing the Mu family's reputation. You even said that you want to hold a grand wedding. I think you're determined to throw the Mu family's reputation to the ground. Mu Linfeng continued without waiting for him to reply. What kind of woman is Yun Shishir? She was just a tool for the Mu family to give birth to a child. The contract clearly states that after giving birth, she can't cause any trouble for the child's custody. But what about her? Not only did she hide the child by her side, but she even tried to use him to elevate her status. Is that even possible? What will others think of the Mu family if this gets out? The Mu family's reputation can't be ruined in this woman's hands. If the public finds out that the young madam of the Mu family was just a surrogate mother back then. Mu Yaja did not say a word. Clearly, he did not agree with his words. Mu Linfeng restrained his anger and tried to persuade him. If you really want to get married, I'm naturally happy to see it happen. You're not young anymore. If you want to get married, find a woman of equal status. Not only can you give the Mu family an explanation, but you'll also have a strong wife who can help you in your career. When the time comes, you'll have stabilized your foundation and no one will be able to shake you. Isn't that the best of both worlds? But what about you? You stubbornly married a commoner with no background, and this woman even gave birth to a child. Wouldn't it be bad if word got out that she had a child out of wedlock? Even if she had a child out of wedlock, he's still my son. Mu Linfeng was exasperated. But the public doesn't care about this. They all thought that Mu Yichen was Mu Wanru's son. Now, although the outside world knows that you and Mu Wanru have broken off the engagement, they still don't know who Mu Yichen's biological mother is. If this news gets out and the outside world learns that the Mu family used surrogacy, it will definitely affect the Mu family's reputation. I don't care. I've made up my mind. Anyway, I can't annul our marriage. No matter what second uncle says, it's useless. Mu Yaja's attitude was very firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Mu Linfeng flew into a rage out of humiliation. He was speechless for a moment before he suddenly took half a step back. It's fine if you insist on not canceling the engagement. If Yun Shishir wants to enter the Mu family, she can. Second uncle will give you half a step, but you want to have a grand wedding. That's impossible. What do you mean? She's married, but she can't say anything. Since you want to marry her, then there's no problem with her being your concubine. However, you mustn't spread the news of your marriage. She's your legal wife, but in name, she can only be considered as a concubine at most. This is second uncle's biggest concession. Concubine. Mu Yaja frowned when he heard this. However, he was not surprised by Mu Linfeng's suggestion. It was just like his style. In the wealthy, a concubine represented a concubine. In ancient times, she was just a concubine and could not be brought up in public. Chapter 1732. In a wealthy family like the Mu family, Mu Xing could only marry a few concubines. Without a grand wedding, a concubine's status was so low that she could not even enter the family tree. If she worked hard enough and gave birth to outstanding children, she could enter the family tree. However, as a concubine, she could not see the light of day or let the outside world know about it. Mu Lianjua's mother was one of them. In other words, if Yun Shishir were to become a concubine, she would have no status in the Mu family. In Mu Linfeng's heart, giving her the position of a concubine was already a favor for her. For a commoner with no background and no powerful maternal family to be able to marry into the Mu family, it was already considered a blessing from her ancestors. Moreover, it was not as if he did not know what kind of person Yun Shishir's biological mother was. She was just a lowly singer from a nightclub in the capital. Only Mu Xing, that old thing, would treat her like a treasure. Even if her biological mother's identity was concealed, Yun Shishir's adoptive parents would still be known by the public. By then, the Mu family's reputation would be greatly tarnished. The story of a commoner and a noble prince would probably only appear in fairy tales. Reality was so cruel. He could not be blamed for being snobbish. A woman like Yun Shishir could not enter the Mu family. However, since he insisted on marrying her, if Mu Yaja insisted on being stubborn, who knew what earth-shattering actions he would take? If he were to create some outrageous news, he would be too ashamed to face others. Since that was the case, why not take a step back? His original intention was to let Yun Shishir enter the family as a concubine and let Mu Yaja marry a woman from a powerful maternal family. It did not matter if they had feelings for each other or not. As for her family background, he was not that strict. After all, in such a big city like the capital, there were only a handful of people who were qualified to be chosen from among the tens of thousands who were on the same level as the Mu family. As long as she had a comparable background, had a decent family background, and had a gentle and outstanding personality, she would be qualified to be the Mu family's young mistress. This way, he could make appropriate concessions for Yun Shusher's entry into the family. Even a ghost would know what Mu Linfeng was scheming at the moment from his cold words. Mu Yaja frowned, but suddenly let out a cold laugh. Second uncle, what era is it now? You're still talking about concubines and whatnot. Forget it. If I marry her, she'll be the young mistress. There are no other options. You. Mu Linfeng was at a loss for words. You brat, why are you so stubborn? You're the stubborn one, aren't you? Haven't I already told you that I, Mu Yaja, have never been so incompetent that I need to rely on a woman to establish my position? I'm not that kind of mediocre person. Second uncle, don't think of me as someone who has to marry a woman with a good family background in order to stabilize his foundation. There's no need for that. Mu Yaja laughed coldly, his tone somewhat arrogant. He had the right to say this. Of course, Mu Linfeng's support was indispensable for him to be able to sit in this position. However, how could a man without any ability stand out in such a treacherous and sinister family? Chapter 1733. He was extremely confident and conceited. One could even say that he was proud of himself. He believed in his own abilities and didn't need to use marriage to secure his position. He despised such methods the most. Mu Linfeng was about to go mad with anger. This rascal was the worst at this. You insist on doing this. Can't you listen to my advice? Marriage is a matter of parents' orders and matchmakers' words. How can you treat it as child's play? Your parents aren't around now, and as your elder, I'm giving you some advice. How can you not listen? Second uncle, you should know who's the head of the Mu family now. Mu Yaja reminded him coldly. Mu Linfeng choked on his words. Since I'm the person with the highest authority in the Mu family, do I need others to decide my marriage and who I marry? Your era is over. It's my era now. You have no right to interfere with what I want to do. After a pause, he said, that's enough. It's useless to say more. You don't have to say too much either, lest you hurt our relationship. Ha! His words were mocking and didn't give him any face. He didn't want to argue with this stubborn old man either. Mu Linfeng was so angry that he was about to have a stroke. He panted heavily on the other end as if he was about to pass out. After a long silence, he said angrily, fine. You're stubborn. You're the most stubborn. If you don't like my idea, it's obvious that you don't care about me. Ha ha. You're the head of the family, so you have the most seniority, right? I think you're really arrogant now that you're the head of the family. So much so that you don't care about me now. You really don't know what's good for you. If you're so capable, you can get married. If you want to hold a wedding, don't use the Mu family's capital. You can't touch a single cent of the company's accounts either. Let's see what you're capable of after leaving the Mu family. With that, Mu Linfeng hung up angrily. Mu Yaja tossed his phone aside, clearly indifferent. At night, Mu Yaja made an appointment with Lu Jinyu. Rather than calling it an appointment, it was more like a summon. The meeting was at a private clubhouse. When Lu Jinyu arrived, Mu Yaja was in the billiard room and had just scored a shot. When he saw Lu Jinyu, he put down his cue stick and looked up. You're here. Boss's summons, I can't be late even if I'm in a hurry. Lu Jinyu took off his jacket and the waiter brought him some drinks. He casually picked up a glass of red wine and took a sip before smiling comfortably. Boss, is there something important you want to talk to me about now? Lu Jinyu, the man who addressed Mu Yaja as boss, was an important figure and was also Mu Yaja's friend for many years. Although they were friends, their relationship was probably closer than that. Mu Yaja had established his own connections outside of the Mu family and secretly cultivated some of his own forces. Other than the Mu family's businesses, he also had his own personal assets and family business. Just as he said, he didn't leave the Mu family with nothing. However, without him, the Mu family would only be a wasteland. Back then, he was groomed by Mu Linfeng to be the successor. As the helmsman, he had worked hard and contributed a lot to the Mu family's success. However, he wasn't a fool. He wouldn't sacrifice himself for the sake of the Mu family. Chapter 1734. Until now, he could say that the assets under his name were not comparable to the Mu family's. However, with the connections he had set up over the years and the inextricable business network, his foundation was already very stable. Lu Jinyu was one of the forces he had groomed. It could be said that he was his trusted aide. He was very capable and very loyal. That was a friendship forged from years of fighting together. This time, he had asked Lu Jinyu to come over to prepare for the wedding. Since he had said it well, he had to do it well too. Since Mu Linfeng had said that it was fine to hold the wedding. However, he could not use a single cent of the Mu family's assets. He had listened and done so. Mu Yaja smiled. Can't I drink with you for no reason? I'm really flattered to hear you say that, boss. Lu Jinyu said with a smile. He put down the wine glass, picked up the cue stick, and stood in front of the table to observe the situation. There was a sharp look in his eyes. Lu Jinyu, 25 years old, was tall and straight. He came from an aristocratic family and was good-looking. When he stood next to Mu Yaja, be it in terms of aura or poise, they could be considered to be on par. Although he was young, he looked gentle and refined. When he smiled, it was as if he was bathing in the spring breeze. He looked like a modest gentleman. However, in reality, his methods were very ruthless. He was the classic character of a smiling tiger. He was absolutely reliable and never failed to get things done. Mu Yaja sat on the sofa and looked at Lu Jinyu, who was standing by the table. He crouched down and played a ball. Suddenly, he said in a deep voice, "I'm getting married." Cough. When Lu Jinyu heard that, the cue stick tilted, and the ball suddenly deviated from its course and hit the edge of the table. He turned around in surprise, clearly feeling that this news was too sudden. "Boss, I'm not prepared for this at all." "You're getting married?" "Yes." Ouch, Lu Jinyu slapped his forehead and said in a daze, "It's too sudden. It's too sudden. I'm not prepared for it at all." Mu Yaja laughed inwardly. "I'm getting married. Why do you need to be prepared?" "Because I thought that you wouldn't have any thoughts of getting married and having children within the next 10 years. Lu Jinyu answered truthfully. Then, he asked curiously, "But I'm really curious." He wondered which girl was so capable that she was able to capture the heart of an ice block like his boss. "I really admire you, really admire you." In Lu Jinyu's eyes, Mu Yaja was a typical abstinent man. He had never seen any woman by Mu Yaja's side since they met. There were many who flocked to him like a flock of ducks, but none of them caught his eye. He was an ambitious person, and all his heart was placed on expanding his business. He had once silently wondered if there was such a problem with his boss's sexual orientation. He was even a little worried about his own safety. "But boss, now that you have a woman, I'm relieved." Lu Jinyu breathed a sigh of relief. Mu Yaja frowned. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." Lu Jinyu hurriedly denied it. He could not let him know that he had once doubted his sexual orientation. Otherwise, what a tragic end. "Boss, which girl is she? Why don't you introduce her to me another day?" Mu Yaja snorted. "There's no need for that." Chapter 1735. His heart was a little hurt. "Boss, you're being too petty with your words. As your brother, I'd like to meet my sister-in-law. At the same time, I'd like to see what a magnanimous lady she is to be able to subdue an ice block like you. You'll have plenty of opportunities when the time comes. You'll be able to see her at the engagement ceremony very soon. At the mention of Yunshusher, Muyaja's lips could not help but curl into a gentle smile. It was a casual and gentle smile that had never been seen before. Seeing this, Lu Jinyu thought to himself, I didn't expect Boss to fall in love one day. As a single dog, he could smell the sour stench of love. He felt like he had been cruelly abused. I've specially asked you to come over for the wedding ceremony to discuss the process. After all, I don't know much about it and wanted to ask for your opinion. Lu Jinyu broke out in a cold sweat. Boss, I don't know either. I've never been married before. I don't even have a girlfriend. After a pause, he suddenly said in a low voice, it's a wedding. According to the rules, first of all, we have to buy a new house as our wedding home and equip it with a more luxurious wedding car. Then, we have to hold a proper wedding ceremony. That's all there is to a wedding. I didn't ask for your opinion in this regard. Muyaja was speechless. Lu Jinyu was confused and lost. Then, I want to make the wedding more presentable. Lu Jinyu naturally agreed with this point. Yes. It has to be. Boss's wedding must be grand. There's no doubt about that. Muyaja continued, if we want the wedding to be grand, we need to spend some money on it. However, I've thought about it. There's no need to use the Mu family's capital. That was the main consideration he had for this point. He had promised Yunshusher that he would give her a wedding of the century that would attract the attention of the world. Naturally, he had to fulfill this promise. In that case, he would need some capital. Mu Linfeng had said that he could hold a wedding, but he could not use the Mu Group's account or withdraw funds from the consortium. He had quite a large sum of money in the Mu family's account, but he could not use it. After all, Muyaja had agreed to Mu Linfeng's request. Since he had spoken, there was no room for negotiation. There was no reason for him to go back on his word. If he said he wouldn't use it, then he wouldn't use it. He had always been a man of his word. Mu Linfeng was waiting to see him make a fool of himself. He thought that without the support of the Muyaja definitely did not have the money to hold a sensational and respectable wedding. He was certain that Muyaja did not have the ability to conjure up so much money. Unless he wanted to use the funds in Mu Group's account. If that happened, he would become a laughing stock. He had spoken tough words, but his actions were like this. He must have been looked down upon by others. However, what Mu Linfeng didn't know was that Muyaja had secretly cultivated a force outside and possessed a chain of assets that couldn't be underestimated. He had plenty of confidence. However, the problem was that his personal funds were already flowing through the industry chain. They were constantly in operation and invested in various projects. If he were to withdraw them all at once, it would hurt his vitality. There was no need to hurt his many years of foundation for a wedding. Hence, he looked for Lu Jinyu to discuss how long it would take for him to withdraw the funds without harming the operation of the funds. Chapter 1736. In this aspect, Lu Jinyu had more experience. Hence, he asked, how much money can you withdraw from my account in a short period of time? Lu Jinyu was stunned for a moment, unable to react. Boss, do you mean, you want to use your own funds to hold the wedding? Yes. Why? Lu Jinyu didn't understand. If they got married, the Mu family had a lot of assets in their account. It wouldn't be a problem to prepare a few 100 million yuan overnight, let alone in a short period of time. Why would he use his own funds? You don't have to question my decision. I have my reasons for doing this. Okay. I understand. Lu Jinyu was silent for a moment. He thought for a while and said, Boss, I've done some calculations. The funds in our account are now operating in various capital chains. The funds in the capital pool are all tied up. We can't withdraw much of the idle funds in a short period of time. It's about tens of millions. Mu Yaja frowned. That's too little. It's not enough. Lu Jinyu sighed. There's no choice. During this period of time, the end of the year is approaching. The funds in the capital pool are very tight. It won't recover in a short period of time. It's already the limit to withdraw this much. Mu Yaja tapped his fingertips on the table and asked, if I want to withdraw 500 million yuan, how long will it take? Lu Jinyu raised his eyebrows in surprise. He then said, at least, after the new year, the funds will recover. A few 100 million yuan won't be a problem. So long. What about the wedding house? Do you need to arrange it yourself? Mu Yaja said in a low voice, didn't you hear me just now? I won't use the Mu family's capital. I have properties under my name now, but they are all the Mu family's capital. If I say I won't use them, I won't use them. As for the wedding house, I'll definitely buy another one and write it in her name. Lu Jinyu pursed his lips. The wedding house isn't the biggest problem. The problem is, boss, how do you want to arrange the wedding? The investment in the wedding can be said to be a bottomless pit. There's no limit to it. Naturally, we'll do it in the best way possible. Mu Yaja paused for a moment and then said, I don't want to delay the wedding for too long. Get it done as soon as possible. As for what you said about the funds only coming back after the new year, that's not a problem. I'm not optimistic about getting married in winter. It would be very appropriate to hold the wedding in spring. Pay more attention to the funding issue for me. Lu Jinyu was suddenly even more curious about what kind of woman Yun Shishir was. He actually made Big Boss think about how to arrange a grand wedding, and even didn't hesitate to transfer funds from the capital pool. This was unprecedented. Boss, when is the engagement ceremony? Mu Yaja smiled and said, the preparations are almost done. I'll invite you then. Okay. Then I'll be looking forward to it. Lu Jinyu sat down at the table. Suddenly, he regained his serious expression and said, but, let's put that aside. Since you've asked to meet me, I'd like to mention something to you. What is it? Mu Yaja's expression also became serious. Then, Lu Jinyu discussed with him the recent problems that had arisen in the company. Lu Jinyu never made decisions on key issues and always followed his advice. 5 years ago, Mu Yaja began to focus on cultivating his own power outside of the Mu group. Chapter 1737. Lu Jinyu could understand his decision very well. As a century-old wealthy family, the Mu family dominated the entire Asian economy. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were one of the top wealthy families. Perhaps there were very few consortiums in the world that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Mu Corporation. However, Mu Yaja was determined to leave the Mu family and cultivate his own business. Firstly, it was because he was very ambitious. Although the Mu Corporation was deeply rooted, it was difficult for it to develop further because of the constraints. The Mu Corporation had a political background. It could be said that it was the economic heart of the country. If it was involved in the front line, it would cause the entire country's economy to collapse. Therefore, there were many restrictions. Secondly, because it was a family consortium, it involved the interests of many people. The involvement was too deep, and every step was treacherous. Therefore, he was determined to establish his own Xingyu financial group with his many years of experience and connections in the Mu Corporation. After 3 rounds of financing, it gradually got on the right track. Until now, the Xingyu Financial Group's development momentum was majestic. It had become a force that could not be underestimated. Under the name of the Xingyu Financial Group, there were 4 major companies. Among them, the first company, EasyBuy, was a senior shopping website established 7 years ago. When the website was first established, no one cared about it. However, Mu Yaja had a unique insight. As early as 7 years ago, he saw the development momentum of online shopping and invested in it. A year ago, Easy Buy was listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange and had a huge market value. In addition to the shopping website, Muyaja was also involved in many other industries. In addition to real estate, resorts, and financial services, there were many undeveloped emerging industries with limitless potential. As Muyaja's right-hand man, Lu Jinyu had always been in charge of all the affairs of the Xingyu Financial Group. If there were any problems in the financial group, he usually did not report to Muyaja. Instead, he handled it himself. He had business talent and unique skills, so he could often take charge of the overall situation. However, if it was more important and troublesome, Lu Jinyu would refer to Muyaja's opinion no matter what. He listed out all the big and small problems that had recently occurred in the company to him. Muyaja gave his own suggestion. The two of them discussed for a long time and actually hit it off tacitly. That's what I was thinking as well. I didn't expect that I would agree with you. There are some things that you don't have to ask for my opinion. I believe that you can handle things well. After all, I have my eyes on you. You have the ability. Lu Jinyu smiled and said, "Since we're done talking, shall we practice?" He looked at the billiard table at the side and felt an itch in his heart. It's been a long time since I've sparred with boss. My hands are itching. No. Muyaja raised his wrist and looked at his watch. It's getting late. I should go home. Lu Jinyu frowned. Why? Why are you in such a hurry to go home today? Could it be that sister-in-law is at home and is in a hurry to go back to accompany madam? Muyaja smiled. Noticing the smile on his face, Lu Jinyu suddenly fell into a daze. Muyaja saw his strange expression and raised his eyebrows. What's wrong? Look at your expression. What's on your mind? Nothing. I just feel that boss has changed a little. Lu Jinyu said truthfully. Changed? Muyaja was intrigued. How has it changed?